Welcome to the NWO Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Logan Bailey.
Welcome to the NWO Sports Podcast Football Edition, brought to you by our primary sponsor, 3Chord. I'm your host, Logan Bailey, and joined today by Keith Brown, AJ Fairchild, and Tony Fairchild. So thanks again for coming on the show, guys, and we are at Week 7. So thoughts going into this week?
Just a crazy week, man. It was a big week last week. It's just getting closer to playoff time.
Every week we think they're the big games for the previous week, and then you look at this week's schedule, and there's more and more big games. So can't wait.
Couple of really big ones this week.
Yep.
Yeah, and the weeks just get more hectic. And obviously last week, I wasn't here on Friday. I went on that fishing trip, and we were just talking before all the chaos that pursued. So last week when we filmed, I dropped the SD card in the parking lot and was looking around till 1 a.m, and then I had the fishing trip and work, and it was just a disaster. But nonetheless, it was produced out, so that's all that matters.
Good job, Logan. Good job.
But it never fails.
Thank grace.
Didn't sleep. You're like
right,
10 hours short on sleep, but you made it.
Hey, and I caught a couple salmon up in Michigan, so that's all that matters.
Bonus.
Yep. All right. Well, we're going to get things rolling here because we got a special guest coming on later. So let's go ahead. Let's look at how we did for picks last week. Keith, AJ, Tony, and Matthew all tied last week with a 16-2 record, all excellent by those guys. While Bryce and myself finished 14-4. Matthew leads the year with an 88-24 record, with everyone else close behind. So Matthew keeps getting it done week after week, and again, I don't know how he does it. Same with those predictions for breakout players of the week. He nails them all the time. So,
and that Hilltop game was one I almost picked. I almost picked that.
He told me about that because he actually watched them. I think it was them, and he's watched North Central and that Cardinal Stritch.
Yep.
And he goes, this is the week for Hilltop. And I said to him, I don't know about that.
You kind of mentioned that last week, and I thought, I almost switched. I should have.
I was like, Matthew was telling me about, man, I don't know. Cardinal Stritch doesn't look all that good. I think Hilltop can take him. And sure enough, Hilltop ended up winning. So, Matthew's always got the inside information on these teams. So if he's telling you something, it's probably right. All right, let's go ahead. Let's get into Week 6 game recaps, and we're going to start with NWO Sports Game of the Week. We're looking at Patrick Henry at Wauseon, and Patrick Henry came away with this one and a huge conference matchup, winning this 30-24. And this was actually Patrick Henry's first time that they beat Wauseon since 2018, and the first time on the road that they beat Wauseon since 2012. So very impressive from the Patriots. Wauseon was actually up 14-8 at halftime. And looking at time of possession, Patrick Henry had the ball for 27 minutes and 3 seconds, and Wauseon had it for 20 minutes and 57 seconds. So again, Patrick Henry's been controlling the clock. You look back, I believe it was last week, they really controlled the clock against Bryan as well, and it's paying them dividends down here in the stretch. Looking at total yards of offense, Patrick Henry had 330 yards. Wauseon had 221. Looking at the turnover battle, Patrick Henry had 3, 2 fumbles and 1 interception. Wauseon had 2, 1 interception and 1 fumble. Let's look at some top players and players of note. Patrick Henry, running back Houston Miranda, is a workhorse for that team, and he finished with 29 carries, 132 rushing yards, 4.6 yards a carry, and 4 rushing touchdowns. Wide receiver Landon Johnson, 5 receptions, 56 receiving yards, 2 carries for 54 rushing yards. Quarterback Nashmeyer was 13 of 20 for 146 passing yards, but did have 1 interception. And then looking at some key guys from Wauseon, quarterback Trey Parsons was 14 of 24, good for 58%, 212 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and he did have 1 interception. Again, Mr. Showtime, wide receiver Tyson Rodriguez, 4 receptions, 60 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, and linebacker Austin Kovar finished with 21 tackles. So,
flying all over the place.
That's what I mean. So, guys, what are your thoughts on the Patrick Henry at Wauseon game?
I mean, just for me, it was we listened. We checked into scores and saw that Wauseon was up. I said, "Oh boy, you didn't know. Maybe they had Patrick Henry's number, but Patrick Henry was able to pull it out. And obviously, they just kind of threw the straps on Miranda and rode him into victory."
Yeah, it really sets up a showdown for this week here with Patrick Henry versus Liberty Center. We'll talk about that one here in a little bit, but really setting up a showdown for the NWOAL.
Yeah, again, Houston Miranda just keeps bringing us lunch pail every single week. And Landon Johnson's numbers aren't as gaudy as they were last year, which is probably what, obviously, Coach I probably wants. He'd rather see his running attack prevail each game. But, Miranda's up, and Landon Johnson, the threat's always there. He's just not being, used as much as he was last year, which that's a win-win situation for the Patriots.
Yeah, and the thing you look at it, too, both guys are both being efficient.
Yep.
And Landon Johnson, though, he's not getting those numbers that he had last year, but you have guys like Lincoln Krieger stepping up. Yep. You have Houston Miranda stepping up at running back. So their offense is a little bit more balanced, but I think it's really doing them well this year as well.
No, without a doubt.
And, you look at Houston Miranda, 29 carries. That's a lot of carries for a high school running back, and he's really really carrying that load, and he's doing it well. And I would think for average carries for a running back in high school, you're looking at maybe 15 to 18 average, and he's getting almost double that each game. So those blows, they have to add up. But, for the most part, he's staying healthy, and he continues to work week in and week out. So
big shout out to that offensive line. They're doing their job.
Exactly. On the flip side, Wauseon, it's a tough loss for them, but they still have a quality ball club. But at the end of the day, they got to just try to work and get to the point where they can win those big ones. Sometimes I feel like they struggle at that point, but don't doubt Wauseon because they've got a lot of good athletes there.
Yep. Yeah, they led us to half, and like we pointed on last week, when it comes to the big games, Coach Moore has the boys there. It's like a roller coaster. They can get up, they just can't get over. But hey, they still have time to prove it here in the next 3 weeks. They got some big games coming up.
All right, let's look at the next game here. Looking at Montpelier at Eden, and this one was a thriller. Eden ended up winning this game 35-34, and what a game it was to be at. There was a large crowd, a great atmosphere between two programs having excellent seasons to this point. Eden jumped out to a 22-6 halftime lead, but Montpelier fired back with 28 second-half points. Montpelier scored with actually 21 seconds to go in the fourth quarter and decided to go for the two-point conversion and win, but came up just short and was sacked on the play. Plenty of offense in this game with 874 total yards of offense from both teams. Montpelier had totaled 434 yards of offense, and Eden had 440. Looking at a couple top players here from Eden, quarterback Kyler Sapp, 26 of 38, 68%, 418 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns. He had 11 carries for 68 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, totaling 5 touchdowns for the game. Wide receiver Max Radabaugh, 7 receptions, 123 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns. Wide receiver Kendall Briggle, 3 receptions, 115 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. And linebacker for the Bombers, Cole Olds, 13 tackles, 1 QB hurry, and 1 sack. And then looking at some key guys for Montpelier, quarterback Caden Sharps, 20 of 37, 54%, 301 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He did have 1 interception, 14 carries for 94 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and he, as well as Kyler Sapp, had 5 total touchdowns for the game. Honestly, one of probably Sharp's best performances of the year. Looking at wide receiver Cam Smith, 8 receptions. He led the team, 99 receiving yards. Wide receiver Nathan Rummel, 4 receptions, 60 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. And linebacker Bryce Cooley, 10 tackles, 1 sack, and 2 tackles for loss. So what are your guys' thoughts here on the Montpelier-Eden game?
It's a heartbreaker to lose that way, to put in 4 good solid quarters and then come out and just not get the point after conversion. That's rough. I've been there. We lost, I think it was my sophomore year in high school, back when Landon Dravis was there. Had the same thing happen. He ended up breaking his finger. We were going for the PAT, but ended up missing the hold and lost by a point. I think it was it district, just regional, something like that? I forget what it was.
Central Catholic.
District,
it was done at LCC. And it's such a heartbreaker to lose a game like that.
Well, we talked about last week going into this game for Montpelier, if they could come out with a win, it would be a program builder. But listening to the post-game show for Coach Robinson on Black Swamp, Lynn interviewed him. He was so proud after the game of his. You could tell that it was disappointing in his voice, but he was just so proud as where his team is at currently, which we'll talk to him later. I actually can't wait for that interview. But yeah, to Montpelier, honestly, coming into this game, I don't really think probably anybody gave him a chance. And you have a chance to win the game on a 2-point conversion. And curious if there was any hesitation from Coach to hey, should we kick for the tie or are we going for the win? So, well, something we can ask him later. But Montpelier is definitely headed in the right direction. And this game right here proves it 1,000%.
I agree with you, Keith. That's you go for 2, go for the win. I mean, that's a coaching decision, and you really just reach in your pocket and go, yep, we're going to go for it. It's again, I would hope we can get the answer on that later on. But a tough loss, and I don't doubt them from going for the win. I mean, why not?
That's one thing too. I'm not sure that Montpelier, if they even have a kicker too, that may be a question we can ask as well. But nonetheless, to lose by 1 point, you're in that game against another quality opponent in the Eden Bombers. I know there's no such thing as like moral losses.
Right.
But I mean, I think you got to take some points out of this game, and it really shows that the program is moving in the right direction, like you said, Keith. So overall, I think Coach Robinson's doing great things. And on the flip side, Eden, Antwerp kids have talked after Antwerp played Eden. I think Eden won a lot of respect from the Archers as well, because they said Eden will easily go and win 8-9 games this year.
Yep.
And, they're going out and they're winning them, and they're doing an excellent job. Again, Coach Olwin, he's been around forever, and he knows how to win.
And it's just ironic that, speaking of Coach Olwin, I think Colin Halbert came up with a huge stop on that 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
So defense actually won the game for Coach Olwin.
But yeah, overall, it was a good game, and if you were there, you definitely got your money's worth. That's for sure.
I said the crowd was just amazing there, from what I understand. So,
all right, we'll keep things rolling here. Looking at the next game, Wayne Trace at Sonora. Sonora ended up winning this game 21-13. I was not there, but these guys all were, so I'll kind of give a couple talking points and then I'll let them lead in. So Sonora led 21-7 at halftime. Looking at total yardage, Wayne Trace had 343 yards, so actually outgaining the Rams, and Rams had 206 yards of total offense. Turnover battle, Wayne Trace had 3 with 3 interceptions. Sonora had 0, which that's been a big talking point for us is turnovers, winning that turnover battle, and Sonora goes out and they win that. Looking at some other things, Wayne Trace had their way with the Sonora their Sonora defense, especially in the second half. And looking at some top players, Sonora wide receiver Owen Ackerman really had a big game. 2 receptions, 69 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Quarterback Dominic Graziani was 3 of 9, 90 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 10 carries for 48 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. And then defensive back Trent DeLarber, he had a huge interception late in the fourth that kind of helped seal the game for Sonora. And then looking at the Wayne Trace Raiders, wide receiver Dylan Hildebrand, 9 receptions, 92 receiving yards. Wide receiver Jude Stoller, 3 receptions, 27 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. And quarterback Kyle Stoller, he was 30 of 50, so they threw the ball a lot that game, 60%, 240 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. He did have 2 interceptions, but he had 19 carries for 59 rushing yards, so really putting a lot of the weight on that offense on Kyle Stoller. Guys, you were all there. We'll get into some other points later, but why don't you guys talk about the game?
Yeah, we'll talk about the main point that everybody saw and is talking about this week. But focusing on the game itself, when I went through and did my post-game article, looked at the stats, the most amazing stat of this game and probably any game in most recent memories is Wayne Trace ran about 50 more plays than Sonora. I think it was 86-36 or something like that. I mean, it was like the second half, the Rams defense had to have been gassed because they were on the field like the entire game. And they did come up with some big plays when needed in the second half. So Stoller, he's going to be a heck of a quarterback here in the next 3 weeks, especially with the Antwerp game coming up. And receiver Hillenbrand seemed like at the end of the game, he had 9 receptions. It felt like he had 19 because he was everywhere on offense for the Raiders. But the Raiders' offense is going to be a tough out here in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Rams again struggled at times passing, running surprisingly, but the first touchdown was a thing of beauty. That's probably the best pass and reception that Dom has had in 2 years. It was perfect, right on the money, perfect spiral, hit Ackerman in stride. But in the end, it's a win for the Rams, and we'll discuss the play at the end of this. But for the Rams defense to be on the field basically the entire second half, I thought they did come up with some huge stops when needed.
Yeah, I don't think I was trying to look real quick, but I'm not sure how many first downs Sonora had in the second half, but it wasn't many.
I think it was 3.
Yeah, and it was almost like we came out after halftime and was trying to play not to lose that game. 21-7, and instead of just kind of continuing to attack, and we just couldn't get the ball. We couldn't move the ball, and then obviously the main talking point that I'm sure that anybody that's watched the video heard my voice plenty of times, but that ball was thrown in the end zone. It was way overthrown. Winslow threw it way too far, easily picked off by Sonora, and none of us heard a whistle. None of us heard a whistle.
I don't think
I can attest Wayne Trace players did not hear a whistle either. I was talking to some of those kids as well.
And I would have thought, if Wayne Trace could have heard a whistle, he wouldn't have just taken that ball and went right in the end zone. But we picked it off, and we never took the knee, never went down, in our eyes, never stepped out of the back of the end zone, nothing. And he just turned around, walks back, and handed it right to one of the Raiders, who was very intelligent, and then just literally took 2 steps and went back in the end zone. And Boy, I'm not sure, but to me, it was a touchdown for Wayne Trace. It should have been, at least in my eyes. I never heard a whistle. I never seen the referee blow it dead. I never saw his hands go with nothing. And then the referees walked together and they walked out. And then the story we got was he stepped out of the back of the end zone. Okay.
I think, looking at a couple different viewpoints. So, even if Sonora wouldn't have caught that, game over, end of story. He decided to catch it. So, okay, you got to play this out.
Right.
He didn't do the right thing. Should have took a knee, whatever. Right. But, I think it was just a very sloppy ending from everyone. And, there was a lot more drama than what there should have been.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day. Yep. So.
And then, like we heard a couple of people say this, Coach Holden, kudos to him. He didn't really, at first, he was on the field, wanted an explanation, which any coach would have been.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, probably
100%.
any other coach would have probably been in berserko mode out there. But, he calmly rallied his troops, went back to the sidelines. They huddled in the end zone. And I haven't heard a single thing from Coach Holden or the Wayne Trace football program. The inner circle program.
Right.
Your outliers you hear something from. But the actual program itself, you haven't heard anything from. So kudos to Coach Holden and Wayne Trace program.
And I tell you what, though,
being stand up about it.
That Wayne Trace Raiders program, they're a quality program. You take away some of those mistakes, and there's a couple of calls earlier in the game too. Like I saw one too where Sonora's quarterback, I believe it was Dominic Graziani, he fumbled the ball. They said that it wasn't a fumble. Actually, one of the accounts on Twitter went back and replayed it, and that ball was out before he was on the ground, and they had the ball running with a couple lead blockers. So you look at the couple key plays, it was almost like I've been saying too, it was like Sonora's version of being on against Wayne or Antwerp.
Antwerp,
Absolutely.
Where the calls weren't going in their favor. The same thing happened to Wayne Trace this way, where a couple crucial calls did not go in their favor.
And in all honesty, the game went that way. I mean, it was like when we talked about Sonora versus Antwerp, Sonora kind of dominated that game.
Yep. Absolutely.
And Wayne Trace kind of dominated this game, in my opinion. They dominated at least the second half of it, and didn't win where it counted. That was on the scoreboard.
Yep.
Right. Well, yeah. Looking here, total yards 346 from Wayne Trace to the 221 from Sonora. That's total yards. As far as the first downs go, I don't have the halftime breakdown, but Sonora only had 8 first downs to Wayne Trace's 22 first downs. Wow. So that right there really shows the lopsidedness, especially in the second half.
Time of possession on there?
I don't see it.
They're 48 minutes.
It's got
anyway.
They probably had
it was ridiculous. But I tell you what, Logan, you said it. Wayne Trace, and Keith mentioned that Hildebrand. Gee, many Christmas, the kid was all over the field. Every time he turned around, he was either making a tackle or catching the ball. And but
he's a big target out there too. I believe he's like 6'5" as well. So
6'3", I think what the roster said. But he's going to be. I'm telling you right now, Antwerp, if they're looking past Wayne Trace at all, they're in trouble because Wayne Trace is a quality football team.
Yep, absolutely.
Big time.
All right. Let's go ahead. Let's keep things rolling here. Looking at Fremont Ross at Napoleon. And Napoleon won this game big, 41-21. And Napoleon is really starting to find their groove in the Cardinal division of the Northern Lakes League. And this game, I'm going to say it now, may have had the best defensive performance of the season and possibly the last couple years. And it was complete dominance and terror from Napoleon's Trey Rubenstein. I was out in the river fishing, and I was getting texts from one of my friends, and he was texting me, Trey Rubenstein, he's got 2 interceptions already in the first half. Trey Rubenstein, he's got a pick 6. Trey Rubenstein, he's got 4 interceptions in the first half, and one of those being a pick 6. And he also had 2 receptions for 50 yards, and he had a receiving touchdown. So what a performance. I have never heard of someone having 4 interceptions in one game. That has to be a school record. That's just kudos to him, because I said the comment a couple weeks ago, Trey Rubenstein is one of the most athletic kids in Northwest Ohio. And
absolutely.
I mean, you can take that to the bank right now. And he just goes out and he does so well and he produces. And, the thing is that teams know what he brings to the table each game, and they try to stop him. And they've had other kids on Napoleon step up, which they have done an excellent job at really kind of getting things going in the second half. But Trey Rubenstein, man, oh man, props to him.
It's one of those things like throw the ball to the other side. Do something.
Right.
Jeez.
But looking at a couple other kids from Napoleon. Wide receiver Garrett Hall had a really good game. 5 receptions, 81 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. So another kid stepping up. Running back George Eggers really coming to the table strong with 7 carries for 91 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. So guys, thoughts on this game here?
Well, like you said, it's really nice to see other kids stepping up. If Trey Rubenstein's taking care of the defense, it's nice to see a couple other names popping up on the offensive side of things.
Agree.
That's the Trey Rubenstein show. I very much you covered it all, Logan. It's good to see him actually do something on defense. Not that he hasn't, but he's probably the focal point on offense. He's taken away most of the game, so he's double teamed. So it's kind of frustrating for him probably on the offensive side. So on the defensive side, he's like, hey, this is my game. I'm going to go for it. And it's amazing. 4 interceptions and a half is it's hard to believe.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Tony, you got any final comments?
No, I'm good on that one.
All right, let's keep things rolling. Look at the next game, Van Wert at St. Mary's, and this one was kind of a shocker to us too. St. Mary's ended up winning this one 21-19. St. Mary's was up 27 to, or that can't be right. 20. I don't know what the final was. Let me see here.
21-14.
21-14 at halftime. Yeah, it must have been. And then looking at total yardage, Van Wert had 322 yards, 230 yards rushing. St. Mary's had 274 yards. All 274 yards were running the ball. So they really ran the rock the entire game. Turnover battle, Van Wert had four interceptions. St. Mary's had 0. Van Wert has actually thrown 7 interceptions in the last 2 games. And then looking at some top players from Van Wert, running back Keldon Bill, 18 carries, 95 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. Wide receiver Connor Campbell, 5 receptions, 81 receiving yards. Linebacker Aaron Reichert had 10 tackles, which led the team. So, guys, thoughts on this game here between Van Wert and St. Mary's?
Heck of a win by St. Mary's. I mean, Van Wert's coming in to your place, kind of like your biggest game of the year up to that point, and St. Mary's took care of business. And from my understanding, they didn't throw the ball more than, I don't know if they threw the ball, honestly, more than 3 or 4 times. And looking at the numbers, it's like a complete dominance on the ground.
And just quick correction, St. Mary's was up 13-7 at halftime. I got that correct. And the final was 21 St. Mary's, 19 Van Wert.
Man, Van Wert's struggling, definitely. After that big win against Defiance, you come to Defiance, come away with the big win. It seems like that was your high point of the season so far, and you can't actually get back up.
And I guess, too, like looking at my big talking point, and I think, honestly, I hate to say it, but I think Van Wert has a serious problem now. I mean, we all kind of thought it was a fluke last week against Wapakoneta. Wapakoneta is a really good team. I know they've kind of struggled. Defiance beat them. But now the sirens have to be going off. You can't turn the ball over 7 times in the last 2 games. It's not characteristic of Van Wert to not control the ball like that. So they really got to get things under control because, Van Wert's a dominant program year in and year out. Yeah. It's just unlike them. And we know that quarterback Brylan Parker for them, he's a heck of an athlete. So, that's the tough thing. When things start going that way, you start thinking about it. You start thinking about turning the ball over, turnovers. Mm-hmm. You got to get out of that kind of mindset, and it can be hard for a lot of times for teams. It's the same with any sports. Baseball, you strike out a couple of times, man, oh man, can it be hard to get out of a slump? You see major leaguers going through that too. So I still think Van Wert's got a good team, but on the flip side, I think St. Mary's, I know we don't cover them, but I think St. Mary's is a lot better than people give them credit for. They played Defiance tough. They got a couple other key wins in the WBL. So I know St. Mary's started out slow, but they're really kind of taking a hold of things in the WBL. So all right, let's keep things rolling. Looking again in the WBL, Defiance at Kenton. Defiance won this game 46-18, and this game was close at halftime with Defiance leading 16-12, and Defiance outscored Kenton 30-6 in the second half. Looking at some key players from Defiance, running back Abel Rubio, 25 carries, 118 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, a really quality performance out of him. Quarterback Brez Zippel was 7 of 14, 50%, 131 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns with 1 interception. Brady Borton and Jordan Wright both had 1 receiving touchdown apiece, and Anthony Wilder, 9 carries, 94 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, and he had 2 receptions for 13 receiving yards. So thoughts on this game here?
I think that Defiance is doing a great job. They're missing Brogan Castile, they're number 1 running back, I would say. Rubio has stepped up, like you said, running the ball well, and the rumor on the hill is that Brogan's close to coming back. So when he comes back, man, that's going to be huge for Defiance. That'd be a 2-headed monster there. They can rotate him in and out and keep a fresh set of legs on offense and defense both ways. Because he's been playing offense and defense. So giving them both a break, man, that's going to be. I think that's going to pay dividends huge for Defiance.
It's also going to make it a lot easier to transition Brogan back into the offense a little bit. So he's not going to have to take every snap of the game coming back. Right. He can rotate in and out, like you said, stay fresh, but also, injury-wise, let him ease back into being the primary ball carrier.
Yeah, this Coach Cooper here. If you get Castile back and you can alternate your running backs or use them both at the same time, I mean, that's fantastic for Defiance offense.
Yeah, big one this week from Defiance, and then they play Elida, so a big matchup in the WBL. Let's look at the next game here. Hilltop at Cardinal Stritch. Hilltop ended up winning this game 32-2, and that marks Hilltop's first win of the year, so congratulations to them. Hilltop jumped out to a 12-2 lead at halftime. From there, it was all gas, no breaks from Hilltop offense and defense. They outscored Cardinal Stritch 20-0 in the second half. Looking at some key players from Hilltop, quarterback Devin Dempsey was 5 of 17, 123 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception. Running back Wade Wagner had a heck of a game, 11 carries, 139 rushing yards, averaging 12.6 yards a carry with 2 rushing touchdowns. Wide receiver linebacker Cameron Schlosser, another good performance, 2 receptions, 69 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. And on the defensive side of things, he had 10 total tackles, 1 sack, 3 tackles for loss, and 1 pass breakup. And then defensive lineman David Rodriguez, 9 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 3 tackles for loss. So thoughts on the Hilltop Cardinal Stritch game?
I'm happy for Hilltop. I mean, because this is one of those games like we've talked about before and last year and not so much this year, but you go to practice every day, you work, you lose, you come back, you repeat, and probably better for Hilltop. Well, this game was on the road, so that bus ride home had to have been just great. Yeah, big win for Hilltop, and congratulations to their program. You get to enjoy some success, finally.
Yeah, like I said, I thought about picking them this week, and that was a mistake. And I just, because you always think you always play for somebody who's going to get a win at one game, and you got to try to pick that one spot. And kudos to Hilltop for coming away with a victory. It's always a plus when you get a win on the board.
All right, let's look at the next game here. Looking back at the Green Meadows Conference, Paulding at Edgerton. Paulding came away with this one, 54-20. Looking at the turnover battle, Paulding had 2, 1 interception and 1 fumble. Edgerton had 1 with a fumble. Total yards of offense, Paulding had 503 yards of offense, 332 yards rushing. Edgerton had 251 yards, 194 passing. And Paulding was red hot to start the game with the score being 36-6 at halftime. Looking at some key players from Paulding, quarterback Colton Hunt, 16 of 22, 73%, 171 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception. Running back Kobe Ford, man, this kid was a tank as well. 29 carries, 215 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. He had 1 reception for 37 receiving yards. Wide receiver Blake Roanhouse, and he's kind of one that doesn't get much talk about for being a wide receiver in the GMC, but he's putting his name, first, second team candidate for Green Meadows Conference wide receivers. 6 receptions, 60 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. And my man, this guy's becoming one of my favorite players in the Green Meadows Conference, and that's linebacker Jack Woods. 18 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 1 sack. And I don't know, someone's going to have to give me a Jack Woods jersey here soon because he is performing week after week, and I really like what he brings to the table, and we know that kid hits hard. Looking at some key players from Edgerton, wide receiver Scotty Krantz, 9 receptions, 146 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, and quarterback Maddox Baker, 17 of 20, 85%, 194 passing yards, and 2 passing touchdowns. So thoughts on the Paulding and Edgerton matchup here?
Paulding 4-2 easily could be 5-1 at this point with any sort of luck whatsoever in that loss to Ayersville, but probably going to win this week more than likely. I mean, odds are their favorite, I would assume, over Hicksville. Rough last 3 games for the Panthers and Coach Menzie, but hey, you're 4-2 now, could be 5-2, and just keep chugging forward.
4-2 on the verge of a playoff berth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like they're getting to the point where they're getting about ready to clinch. They take a couple more games here. They're going to make the playoffs, and that's been a long time since Paulding's made it.
Yep.
Yeah, they get to that 6-win mark. I definitely can see them getting in. But that you mentioned their red hot starts this game. Paulding's kind of coming on, guys. I know Sonora's got them here next week or so, and it's going to be that's going to be a battle as well. It's just Paulding's playing very, very well right now.
Yeah, right now they're 17th, but they've got 3 big games coming up, and there's a lot of points there to be collected. So.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's something we talked about at the beginning of the year with Paulding. Some of the inconsistencies, and we talked about it with other teams too, but like you said, Tony, they're starting to figure things out, and when you're putting up 503 yards of offense,
absolutely.
Even holding your opponent to 20 points or less, that's going to win you a lot of ball games. So kudos to them, and they go out and they produce week after week, and there's a couple big games coming up for Paulding, and if they win those, holy smokes, they could be program changers.
Absolutely. Yeah, Colton Hunt, it looks like he went solo at quarterback. I don't see Fife in here, so good job there by Colton Hunt.
All right, let's keep things rolling. Look at the next game. Lima Bath at Ottawa-Glandorf. Lima Bath won this one 28-21. Ottawa-Glandorf was right there in this ball game. They were competed the entire game. They were down just 14-21 at half and tied 21-21 at the end of the third quarter. Turnovers, Lima Bath had 2 with 2 fumbles. Ottawa-Glandorf had 2 with 2 interceptions. Total yardage, Lima Bath, we know they have a high-powered offense from when they played Van Wert earlier in the year. which I believe them and Van Wert combined for like 120 points together. So we know they have a good offense. They finished with 439 yards, 283 rushing. Ottawa-Glandorf, again, their offense has kind of struggled. 218 yards with 143 passing. Some key players from Ottawa-Glandorf: wide receiver Grant Schroeder, 4 receptions, 37 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Quarterback Peyton Coleman, 12 of 25, 143 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Linebacker Alex Schroeder, 24 tackles, so that guy was all over the field. Linebacker Vinny Brinkman, 7 tackles, 1 TFL, and 1 defensive touchdown. So thoughts on this game here?
That's a very lopsided offensive yardage. 439 to 218. That's it. Kind of impresses me that Ottawa-Glandorf was in this at the end with how lopsided that is. So the defense must have been performing well, within the red zone is my guess, because holding them to 28 points on 439 rushing yards. I mean, we look at, or not rushing yards, but 439 yards total offense. You look at 503 yards for Paulding, and they put up 54 points. And Lima Bath's only able to come away with 28. It's kind of impressive on Ottawa-Glandorf's defense.
Keith?
Yeah, the rough couple of years for the Titans down there, but a strong program. Just need to stick with it.
All right.
That's probably one of the bigger surprises in the area this year, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't think they won a game last year, honestly.
That's like we've talked about, too. Even like with programs, I think Ottawa-Glandorf, it's just one of those times every school goes through it, too. So they just got to work through and try to, get some wins on the board and kind of move in the right direction. So if you're Ottawa-Glandorf, got to keep your heads up and keep moving, because honestly, it's not a bad performance, because Lima Bath's not a bad ball team. And there's been a few games where Ottawa-Glandorf, they've stuck their nose in there, and they've been real close to coming out with a win. Let's go ahead. Let's move on to the next game. Allen East at Columbus Grove. Columbus Grove ended up winning this one 47-28. Columbus Grove actually avenged their 7-0 loss last year to Allen East. And looking at the turnover battle, Columbus Grove had 2 with 1 interception, 1 fumble. Allen East had 0. Total offense, Columbus Grove had 488 yards with 451 of those being rushing. Allen East had 209 with 133 rushing. Columbus Grove, quick talking point. They went into that game with a game plan and said, we're going to run that ball until they stop us. And unfortunately, Allen East did not, and Columbus Grove ended up with 451 rushing yards, averaging 7.6 yards a carry. So why would you do anything else but run the ball? So excellent job from Coach Schaefer and their game plan there. Columbus Grove, couple key players: running back Trenton Barraza, 32 carries, 258 rushing yards, 8.1 yards a carry, 3 rushing touchdowns. Quarterback Landon Best, 6 of 12, 50%, 37 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. He did have 1 interception, but he had 11 carries for 93 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. And wide receiver Brady Ballsinger, 2 receptions, 15 receiving yards, and both of those receptions were receiving touchdowns. So thoughts on this game here?
You were just mentioning about all the rushing yards, and he had, we talked about Miranda that carried the ball, 29 times? He carried the ball 32 times. So, she's like, I'll take that, Miranda. But man, I'll tell you what, they, again, saddled him up and just, like you said, okay, stop us, and they never did. So, wow, Columbus Grove just kind of dominated the game.
Yeah, it's one thing to average 8.1 yards a carry when you have 15 carries and you're able to move the ball well. But when you have 32 carries and you're still averaging 8.1 yards, you're a workhorse. And yeah, let Columbus Grove just ride that to the finish, because why do anything else, like you said, Logan?
Yeah, Columbus Grove starting to play well. Won 3 straight, 3 out of 4. Only lost to PH, I believe, in that. So Coach Schaefer got the boys back on track.
All right, moving on to the next game here. Ayersville at Hicksville, a Green Meadows conference matchup. Ayersville came away with this one winners 38-14. Ayersville was up 32-8 at halftime. Looking at total yards, Ayersville had 360, 245 of those were rushing. Hicksville had 144, and 115 of those were rushing. So a lot of run game in this game here. Turnovers, Ayersville had 2, 1 interception, 1 fumble. Hicksville had 3, 2 interceptions, and 1 fumble. Looking at some key players from both teams, Ayersville running back linebacker Taryn Knieven, 16 carries, 184 rushing yards, 11.5 yards a carry, 3 rushing touchdowns. On defense, he contributed 10 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. Quarterback Lucas Fishball, 8 of 12, 67%. 115 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 1 interception. Wide receiver Abe Delano, 2 receptions, 37 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. And defensive back Leo Barraza, 9 tackles, 4 tackles for loss. Looking at Hicksville, Brant Langham had 19 carries for 108 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, but he did have 1 interception. So thoughts on the Ayersville at Hicksville game?
Setting up the big rivalry this week with Sonora at Ayersville. Ayersville just keeps chugging along. Very impressive. Running game's almost unstoppable here lately, it seems. Even just keeps carrying the rock and carrying the rock and carrying the rock. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Sonora handles that when they match up this week. But Ayersville is playing well, and Hicksville's still struggling a little bit. Still putting up some points, but just doesn't seem to like they can ever get enough.
Yep.
All right, let's keep things rolling. Look at the next game, Evergreen at Archbold. And Archbold won this one 44-7. Archbold was up 34-0 at halftime. Looking at total yards, Archbold had 358 yards, 229 passing to Evergreen's 112. And they actually had 120 passing, so they had negative rushing yards. Third down efficiency, Archbold was 4 of 8 for 50%. Evergreen was 1 of 8 for 13%. Some key players from both teams. Quarterback Cade Brenner was 12 of 18, 67%. 222 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He had 5 carries for 62 rushing yards. Running back Lucas Dominic, 14 carries, 47 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 1 reception, 9 receiving yards for 1 receiving touchdown. Wide receiver Chase Miller for Archbold, 7 receptions, 129 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. And a couple of players from Evergreen, quarterback Bryce Bolger, 9 of 15, 116 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. Wide receiver Will Roots, 1 reception, 42 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. So thoughts on the Evergreen at Archbold game?
Outside of the Liberty Center loss, Archbold has dominated every single game they've played, which will lead us to our next game in a bit. It just shows you how dominant the Liberty Center is this season. But yeah, Archbold, like they're just steamrolling along.
They're just coming out playing Archbold football right now, just getting the job done.
Archbold's got a few games. I mean, they got Swanton this week, but then they kind of finish up down the pack with Wauseon, Patrick Henry, and Bryan. So they're going to be put to the test the last 3 games. So, like you said, Keith, so far they've been dominating everybody other than Liberty Center.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that just goes to show that leads into our next game here. Bryan at Liberty Center. Liberty Center won this game 63-7 against Bryan, a high-powered Bryan offense. And that just goes to show, Archbold's no slouch of a team. They are very well coached by Coach Dominic, and that's a quality ball club. But that just goes to show how dominating Liberty Center is this year. I thought Liberty Center was good last year. I think they may be better this year. I looked up the closest margin of victory that they've had was actually to Sonora. They beat Sonora by 21 points. Other than that, everyone else has been blown out of the water. So again, it was utter dominance by Liberty Center in this one. 49-0 Liberty Center at halftime. Some key players from Liberty Center, running back Colton Cruz, 9 carries, 189 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, 1 reception for 22 receiving yards. Defensive lineman Landon Bachleman, 4 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks, and 1 interception apiece from Thomas Moeller and Tyler Roars on defense. Quick point for this, I believe Landon Bachleman was actually Matthews' breakout player of the week. So again, he had a very excellent performance on defense. And looking at some key players from Bryan, man, did they shut the Bryan offense duo of Harold and Kepler down. Harold only had 10 carries for 36 rushing yards with 1 rushing touchdown. And Harold was averaging, I'd say, probably at least 170-plus yards a game, and they held him to 36. So, man, is that defense stout. And quarterback Jace Kepler, again, he's another kid that goes out there and is one of the top in the league. 9-17, 69 passing yards. He had 1 interception, but he had 14 carries for 45 rushing yards. So thoughts on this game here?
I was talking to somebody from Liberty Center that was at the game, and it sounded like, like you said, they just shut Sam Harold down. It sounds like he wasn't really able to get anything accomplished. But it sounds like Jace Kepler was the only name they threw out for Bryan. And on the flip side of things, Liberty Center just able to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. And I agree with you, Logan. I think the way they've come around this year, this might be the best Liberty Center team I've seen in a long time. We thought they were good last year, but man, they might have a very solid shot at getting state this year if they continue to perform the way they're performing. Now, they do have a good test this week, but I think we'll talk about that in a little bit. I think they'll come away with that one about as bad as they do against Archbold.
Keith, Tony,
I tell you what, Liberty Center's been pretty impressive. With considering what they lost last year and just kind of trucking along here. Coach Muller's definitely going to have to keep them focused, and it's not like they have a slouch schedule coming, but definitely got to keep them focused, keep them working. Just keep moving down the tracks.
Yeah, nobody can stop the Liberty Center's running attack. That's the key. And we said last week, if we were to check this game at halftime and it was 21-14, but no, it would just come out. I think it was like 34-0 at half or something like that. It was just
Yeah, this
complete
game,
dominance.
This game was 49-0.
Oh, good, jeez.
So yeah, even more.
Maybe it's 32-0 after what?
Right. So. Yeah, Liberty Center just keeps on doing Liberty Center things. And, it's getting to the point, it's getting scary. I don't know if anyone can stop them at this point. So, like AJ said, we'll talk about some of this matchup later on of this week for Liberty Center. So, let's keep things rolling. Just a few games here. We'll kind of skim through and cover the scores. Antwerp at Fairview. Antwerp came away with this one 45-8. A couple key players from Antwerp. Quarterback Carson Altimus, 21 of 28, 75%, 343 yards passing with 4 passing touchdowns. Running back linebacker Reed Leachy had 12 carries for 97 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 6 receptions, 67 receiving yards, and he had 2 interceptions on defense. One was a terrific one-handed interception. Again, this week I plan on adding some clips if I can, and he sent that in. It was actually pretty impressive. And then from Fairview, wide receiver Gavin Mead, 4 receptions. He led the team with 32 receiving yards, and wide receiver Jesse Kuhlman had the lone receiving touchdown for them. So thoughts on the Antwerp-Fairview game?
Antwerp just keeps rolling along. I mean, probably one of the better small school teams in the area. By far.
Yeah, just not surprised at this at all. But again, Antwerp's just going to kind of keep trucking along. Got a test this week.
All right, couple of 8-man games here, and we'll wrap things up for the game recaps. Holgate ended up winning 64 at McKinley 14. Total yardage, Holgate had 461 yards. McKinley had 165. Turnover battle, there were none. Some key players from Holgate. Quarterback Xavier McCord was 8 of 12, 67%, 195 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, 5 carries, 115 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 5 total touchdowns. Wide receiver Isaac Mendoza had 3 receptions, 78 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Wide receiver Dylan Boker contributed 2 receiving touchdowns as well. So thoughts on the Holgate at McKinley game?
Holgate's just trucking. I mean, it's just they struggled to play in 11-man football, but boy, they've got the 8-man figured out.
Yeah, I think Holgate's definitely the clear favorite in the Northern 8 to repeat as conference champions this year. I mean, there's no stopping Holgate. Similar to what we're talking about Liberty Center, Holgate's blown away all their competition. So very impressive out of the Tigers. All right, let's move on. Last 8-man game here. Stryker at St. Mary's Central Catholic. Stryker's been kind of in a rough stretch here, but St. Mary's Central Catholic came out on winners, 45-30. Total yardage, Stryker had 389 to St. Mary's, 469. Turnover battle, each had 1, and they were both fumbles. Some key players from Stryker. Quarterback Jacob Caldwell was 32 of 51, 295 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 11 carries, 81 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. And wide receiver Devin Montague had 9 receptions, 101 receiving yards, and wide receiver Gavin LeBeau, 10 receptions, 94 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. Thoughts on the Panthers here?
Just keep at it. Last year you had a decent season, so keep building upon the little things, and you'll get back to it. You'll have some wins coming up here, I'm sure, and keep building that 8-man team up.
Yeah, build for the future. Your season's winding down for the seniors. Just enjoy every single practice and every single game, and build the underclassmen up for your future program.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead. We'll wrap up. That concludes the game recaps. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. 3Chord is a family-owned and operated business who offers the highest quality embroidery, screen printing, sign and promotional items to customers of Northwest Ohio at competitive prices. Locations in Archbold, Napoleon, and Bowling Green. Check them out at 3chord.com. That's THREECORD.com. BSN Sports is your go-to business for purchasing uniforms, equipment, spiritwear, and anything else your athletic program needs, giving you more time to impact lives on the field. With over 1,200 sales professionals who live, work, and serve in your community, we are always just a short drive or phone call away. Be sure to give your local sales rep and Jim Garris a call for any of your athletic supply needs. Back on the NWO Sports Podcast, and we're on to the Coach's Corner segment of the podcast. This week, we have the pleasure of talking with head coach of the Montpelier Locomotives, joining us, and Coach Andy Robinson. So thanks for coming on the show, Coach.
Thanks for having me out.
All right. Well, first things first, I just really want to start off by commending you for your efforts since you've taken over at Montpelier. All of us here, we talk a lot about new coaches taking over programs and grinding it out and doing the things the right way, even though things don't always go in your favor. But, you've done a really nice job to this point, and I'm just really glad to see that your team's starting to have some success that really shows off for the program.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You guys do a great job out here and giving recognition to all the area schools. And, I appreciate all the publicity you give, especially with Montpelier.
Yeah, and I mean, rightfully so, especially with the season you guys are having. So we're going to kind of get into some things here. We're now into week 7 of the 2023 season. Teams are really starting to develop their identity. What are your thoughts on how your team has played the first half of the season here and where you sit now?
First off, obviously very happy with what we've been able to do so far. Being 4-2 going into week 7, it's the first time in a long time for Montpelier and for this group of kids to have something to kind of play towards for this last 4 weeks of the season, and looking at trying to chase a possible playoff berth. Really happy, first off, defensively with where we've been this year. I try to give him as much credit as possible. Steve Branchow, he was the former head coach when I first got there. He runs my defense for us, and he does an incredible job. He's such a good coach. We've got so many good assistants that do a great job coaching their positions as well. So really happy with where our defense has been. Our front line guys have really played well this year, and the guys in the back end are starting to play pretty well also. So happy with what we do defensively right now, and offensively, I've been happy at the progression that we've made. We got a young quarterback. He does a great job. Hayden's really come along, kind of got him started at the end of last year as a freshman, and then he's really taken off this year as a sophomore. And we had a few struggles still at the beginning of the year, trying to run the spread and get the ball moving around a little bit. And we've really opened it up. We were, 5 wide a lot last week, which is what we want to be able to get into. We want to be able to run the ball still. We're not that full old school Fairview or kind of what Bob does. We're not full on 60 times a game, but we want to throw it quite a bit. And the offense has really done a nice job of figuring out the system and what we want to do, and it helps when you got a kid like Hayden who can sling it back there.
So kind of going into the next point, you guys played a heck of a game against Eden, coming off a tough loss, with that 2-point conversion. I know you guys, came up on the wrong end of that, but you commented on the fans and the community and the great support. Tell me, what the support has been from the fans and community, and what's the hype going around in Montpelier? It's
been fantastic, and these kids deserve every bit of it right now. We've been kind of asking, and listen, I'm not naive. I understand when you're not winning games, it's hard. People, you don't always get that support, and people don't like watching losing. I understand that. I get that. So things have been going a little bit better this year, and slowly each game, we get that win week 2 against Woodmore. It was a battle, but we had some people out. I think there were a few people who wanted to maybe see what we were about. We got an early home win, which again we've not done that in a long time. Won at home early. We come back week 3 and we have one of the most fun wins I've ever been a part of in the Edgerton game right there in overtime. And I think people like our kids started to say, all right, there might be something here, and they've just continued to show out. And last week was awesome. I mean, if you had a chance to be there, it was packed. Our stands were packed, their stands were packed. There were people standing all around. I haven't been a part of a game like that in a long time, especially in 2 small, communities. So, no, that was great. Our fans have just done a really good job. They're very positive. I think they understood that this was going to be a bit of a rebuild, but they've been all for it. And again, when you're winning and things are starting to go right, people want to jump on board, and we've got fans are out, kids are out, so there's been a lot of really fun games so far this year.
How's the locker room and the players? How have they responded to this point? I'm sure they have to be ecstatic.
Yeah, a lot of smiles. It's kids that are playing really hard, and I hope that it never gets taken away. These kids have played really hard for 4 years up to this point. We just haven't had the success, and I've been around this group. I got to coach them. Kind of took over as like a head JV role when Joe Briggle was there, and got a chance to coach this group of seniors as freshmen. And they worked really hard. And I tell you, we didn't win a game when they were freshmen. We struggled to score early on, and then things started getting a little bit better. And I told them, if you guys just continue to stick around, I had no idea at that point, obviously, I was going to be the head guy, but I wanted them to understand if this group sticks around, and I believe we had 11 at that time, and we still have 9 of them. One on an unfortunate injury as a sophomore, so he wasn't able to stick with us. One decided it wasn't, his thing, but the other 9 have stuck it out, and now they're reaping the benefits. So a lot of smiles. It's a group of kids, just a phenomenal group of seniors that work really hard. So the locker room's been a lot of fun, a lot of singing and dancing and singing the fight song after games. So it's great to see for those kids. I'm so happy for them.
Awesome. I'm going to open it up to these guys. Whoever wants to go first.
My question to you, Coach, is tell us a little more about Hayden Sharps. He's just a sophomore, and what do you expect from him, or what's his ceiling in the next 3 years?
I think he has a huge ceiling. A really nice thing. You don't know exactly. You can't, you can't figure out exactly how big a kid's going to be or, what might happen. He had decent size as a freshman last year. He was probably 5'11", pushing 5'11". It comes in this year and he's 6'1", and he puts on probably 20, 25 pounds, and so he's sitting at 6'1", probably about $175. And so, that's a blessing in itself because you can't coach size. He's got a real live arm as a sophomore, and he's so smart, and he wants to learn, and he wants to be better. And this isn't the only sport that he succeeds in. I've watched him play basketball. He's a real nice basketball player. Was a varsity baseball player as a freshman last year. Does some really good things there too. But the best thing about him is he constantly wants to get better. And I told him we worked really hard this off season. We have that beautiful rec facility where we can get inside, and we've got our turf, and he's in there, and we had kids coming out, and he's throwing to him. We're working footwork and talking about this is what our reads need to look like this year, and he kept wanting more and more and more. And obviously, I'm blessed to have lots of old film that I can show him of, hey, this is what we want to look like, this is what your reads need to look like. So each week he just wants to get a little bit better, and he takes coaching really well. He's a fun kid, and they're all kind of like my little brothers, but he's I've been able to kind of take him under my wing, and he's a blast to be around. What
are some of the takeaways that you've learned over the time as head coach here that maybe, going back to when you first started as head coach, what are some pointers that you would give yourself then?
We've done a really good job of being able to slow the game down this year. We've kind of had to, obviously, with our lower numbers. So that's been, I came in last year, I wanted to be in the spread, and I wanted to go fast. And the one thing with going fast is not only do the kids have to think really fast, but I have to think really fast. And being the first time really that I've called a ton of plays in maybe a higher pressure situation, I think the game got to me a little bit last year, and I didn't put us in the best situations. So, I sat down this offseason, reflected. I have, a plethora of coaches that I can talk to, even a guy, again, like Steve Branchow, that he called the offense when he was running. So, going through and learning how to slow the game down, I think that was probably one of the main things, and making sure we're putting kids in really good situations. Again, Hayden's a young kid, so I've got to put him in situations that allow him to succeed, whereas last year Grant Gurrell was playing quarterback for us, and we were both trying to learn at the same time, and I did not always put him in the best situations, and sometimes I think I set him up for failure, unfortunately. So trying to learn that's probably been one of the biggest things. And then again, it's the tiny things that you don't think of. You want to be a head coach and do all this great, and it's small things like, when should I take a timeout? Hey, we're not in the right formation. Do I just let it go, or do I, burn the timeout, get yourself under control, make sure the kids know what's going on, things like that. Just little tiny things. We talk to the kids about, you got to do the little things correct. Well, as a coach, we got to do the little things correct as well. So I'd say those are the two main things.
I just think, my thought on that too is I think I have to appreciate where you're coming from it, understanding that, looking at, realizing that putting kids in positions to succeed, and sometimes realizing that, being critical of yourself is actually beneficial for the program, and, growing and learning. And, this is, a couple years into the program, things like that, really starting to see your growth and things of the program. And like we said, too, it's nice to see, Montpelier's got a winning record this year, and you guys are making some noise. So I think that's just kudos to you and what your staff has done over there. And it's really starting to pay off for you guys.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love what you just said there. That's kind of, being a coach myself, it's kind of like sometimes you got to step back, and I love it. But yeah, for me, like Logan mentioned, you guys just come off that tough loss.
Yeah.
But I got to ask you, how long did you think about going for 2?
Oh, there was no question about it. I've had a few people ask me about it, and it's kind of funny, usually I've been in that situation with players, any of you guys that, obviously have played have been in that situation, and once in a while you'll come off and the coach will say, like, do you guys want to go for 2? What do you want to do? And I had kids coming off right away like, hey, are we going to go for 2? And I'm telling them, there's no question about it. You just battled your butt off for, the entire second half and got back to this situation to win it with 20 seconds. We're going to go try to win this thing. There was no, I didn't even think twice about it. There was no question.
Yeah, sometimes you get in those situations that if it works out, you're the hero, and sometimes if it doesn't, then everybody's like questioning you. And for me, myself, I when I found out you guys went for 2, I don't question it at all. I'm like, that's what I would do in that situation myself. I would go for 2 and try to win the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you talk about your quarterback and being a sophomore, you guys obviously have a bunch of kids coming up. You guys are looking good for the next couple of years.
We think so. We think we're building something, and again, not naive in the fact that I know we've got a really good senior class. We're going to lose a group of 9, talented kids, and all 9 of them bring something really good to our team. But I like our junior high class coming up. This is first time in, I think they told me 8 to 10 years where we've got 11 8th graders, so we play a lot of mixed games, but we have 20 7th graders. We were able to split, and we've actually given our 7th graders, they haven't got to play any yet, but they're going to end up playing 3 7th grade games on their own. So that's a big deal for us. Cool. We didn't get to have a JV team this year with our low numbers, so getting them as much experience as possible is a big deal. And we got a good mixture we got some big boys that we think are going to be able to be really good on the line for us coming up, and we have a lot of really good athletes coming up as well. And then our 5th and 6th are also 30 plus, so we're able to have 2 teams there in our tackle bar league. So we're excited with what's coming up, and we know we've got a nice sophomore class right now, a few talented juniors, and a couple of talented freshmen that there's going to be some good pieces coming up.
Why don't you tell me, I think I've seen on Twitter or whatever, you guys do a tradition of painting an M on the field. Why don't you tell about that? And do you guys have any other traditions that you guys like to do over at Montpelier? I just thought that was kind of interesting. So
yeah, it actually came last year after we got our first win, which was against TCC, and we came back, and Eli Fackler's dad is actually Tate Fackler. He paints the field for us and gotcha. does a great job. And he came to me and said, hey, we've got this mold of this M. He paints M's throughout the edge of the field and stuff, and he was like, what would you think about starting this tradition? And I said, I thought that was awesome. He goes, it kind of looks like a W one way, and it looks like the Montpelier M the other way. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a phenomenal idea. So, yeah, really, that was Tate Fackler's idea, and we kind of rolled with it. We put 3 on the field last year, and really what it is it looks like a W as you're walking onto the field, and it looks like an M as you're walking off the field, and we just kind of ran with that. So that's been a nice little tradition that we've started, and I would love to carry on going forward.
Yeah, very cool. I just saw some pictures of that. I thought that that's pretty cool. It gets things like that get the kids excited, and it really kind of builds a culture there in the program. So I thought that was pretty neat. Yeah. Going into the next point, you kind of mentioned on Eli Fackler. Why don't you talk about him? And we've talked about the offensive side of the ball. Looking at the defensive side of the ball, he's been a menace on that side of the ball, setting the single game sack record with 6. And just talk about him and what he has done for your defense.
He's a monster. It's a blessing to have a kid like that. And he's been a work, and we've been trying to keep him healthy. He has seemed to have an injury every year as a freshman, a sophomore, a junior. So this year was, can we keep him healthy, playing 2 ways? Because we knew what we had. He's a big power lifter. So if you ever get a chance to see, he puts up some insane numbers. We do a 1,000-pound club, which is our bench, our squat, and our deadlift. So it's only 3 lifts, and I believe he's pushing 1,600 pounds between the 3. He is an absolute monster. I truly believe. I don't think football is his main passion, which is kind of funny when you watch him play because he's just so talented at it. I think he's good enough that if he chose to, he could probably go somewhere around the area and play. But he just plays with a super high motor. He's extremely athletic. He's actually, if you were to put 40 times up, he's probably our top 2-3 fastest kids on the team. And that's sitting at 6'2" and 210 pounds. So just having a kid like that, we're going to miss him when he's gone. He's a really good kid, and he's a fantastic football player for us, especially on the defensive line.
We talk about records. Another kid that broke records, wide receiver Braden Brink, breaking some wide receiver records too. What has he brought to the table? Obviously, Hayden Sharps is having a phenomenal season. So is Brink. So I just wanted to kind of bring him up. Thoughts on him?
Braden's just done a really good job. He's just gotten a little bit better each year. And this offense, you love to have a few guys that can, take the top off. And you got to have some guys that have some wiggle that play a little more of our slots. But he runs one of our outside, and he can take the top off people. He's got real good hands. He's had good hands for us for a while. He got in the weight room a little bit more this off season, which I think helped. He's just a nice athlete again, a basketball kid, track kid. We've been able to find ways to get him the ball, and people continue to want to press him and get up in his face, and he does a good job of getting off those presses and getting over top, and him and Hayden have a real nice connection. So he does a really good job for us, being able to find gaps and again get over top of people when we have those opportunities, and he's made the most of his opportunities when he's had them.
A couple more questions here. You guys want to ask any, or I've got a few if you guys don't.
What's your proudest moment to date so far, Coach? Like it's been a moment in practice, a moment on the bus, on the trip back, like just something that, hey, I'm pretty proud of where we've brought the team from where it was to where we are now.
I would have originally told you it was the Edgerton game. We go in on a predominantly solid program in this area, and we're up 2 scores at half, and you could kind of see it in the kids looking at like, oh my God, we're up. And so it was talking to them like, hey, we haven't been in this situation a whole lot, and they fought back in the second half, and then it's, you worry, is the doubt going to come back of, here we go again, and no, we just continued to fight and fight and fight, and you find a way to win it in overtime. But honestly, now what I would tell you is, as hard as the loss was on Friday, watching what we did in the second half against Eden would be easily, I think, my proudest moment. I told the kids that, losses are supposed to, eat at you and kill you. And I sat up a long time on Friday night thinking about different things. But when I came back in Saturday morning, it was just telling the kids like, man, I'm so proud of you guys. We could have just folded. It was 22-6. We stalled offensively, and we come out in the second half. I looked at them at halftime. I said, just trust me that you can do this. You just believe that we can do this. And God, we went out and we did it in the second half. And again, we were that close. I mean, and it sucks. A loss is a loss. I told him that, and we're never going to accept losing. And we're not going to accept losing anymore. But just finding ways to get yourself back into a game like that I was very proud of.
Yeah, like I told the guys, I heard your interview with Lynn after the game Saturday morning, and I told these guys, like Coach Robinson was a tough loss, literally 20 minutes after the game, but you were so proud of the community, the players, like everything surrounding that. You could just tell in your voice how proud you were of that moment. So,
and again, we know it's not going to happen like that. It feels maybe like it's starting to, wow, they've jumped on the ball and they're getting it rolling, but it's still going to be a process. And hey, our talk was, all right, so how do we win that game the next time it happens? Whoever that is against, all right, that's now what we have to focus on. And Coach Branchow had brought up a really good point of, how do we find a way to get just each one of you just a little bit better so the next time we get in that, position, we're on the winning end of it instead of the losing end, which, again, you go back to the Edgerton game, we were on the winning end that time. This time we happen to be on the losing end. Let's figure out how to make sure that doesn't happen again.
A couple more questions here. Where would you like to see your team grow and improve in the next few games of the regular season?
The offense continuing to put together maybe a full game. I think we've had some really good halves. We've maybe had 3 really good quarters, but I don't know if we've had 4, a full game's worth. So offensively, I'd like to see us continue to grow. Again, that's Hayden continuing to grow a little bit. It's our receivers just getting a little bit better. And then some of these young guys that we have. Unfortunately, for some of these young guys, they're working their tail off. Because we didn't get a JV season, they're not getting as many reps as we want. So watching them continue to grow a little bit. Our special teams has to continue to get a little bit better too. Those are probably the ways that we've got to continue to get better going forward.
Last question here. You match up this week at home against Van Loo. What are your thoughts on Van Loo, and what will it take to get a win?
It's tough with Van Loo. They obviously have their struggles, but I mean, you look at them, this is a team that predominantly plays with less than 20 kids every single year. Their kids play really hard, and you have to. You wouldn't sustain, a program if you couldn't. So, telling our kids, like, we're not going to overlook them. If you look what they did a couple weeks ago, they were up on Northwood at half. And, we have the film and we're watching it. It's, man, these kids play really hard. They might not be the most talented team, okay, or have a ton of, phenomenal athletes, but they know what they want to do scheme-wise, and they're trying to do it as well as they possibly can. So, looking at them, we know we got to come out and we got to play really hard from the get-go, and it's a chance for us to work on a lot of different things and get ready to be improved going into Northwood, Ottawa Hills, and Hilltop to finish out the season, because we know we're going to have to win the majority of our games going forward if we want a shot to get into the playoffs.
All right. Well, I just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy week to join us. We really appreciate talking to you. Love what you're doing at Montpelier. Good luck this Friday, and good luck the rest of the season.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you for having me on.
All right. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. For any of your auto body or collision needs, be sure to check out Bat and Stevens Body Shop. Voted the #1 body shop in Northwest Ohio by Crescent News readers. Give them a call today at 419-497-3111 to schedule your free estimate. Check out Sonora Rams Live. Live events broadcast on YouTube, and post-game results, articles, schedules, and more can all be found on TenoraRams.com. Feel free to look up their Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages as well. Fairchild Family Chiropractic aims to help families to get better together in the least invasive way possible. Dr. Fairchild focuses on the neck using the Blair technique and Palmer package, adjusting to correct spinal misalignments. Located in Defiance, Ohio. Call Dr. Fairchild today at 419-576-5070 to schedule an appointment. We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast, and we're on to Player of the Week from Week 6. So we'll go ahead and we'll reveal our nominees for Player of the Week, and the guys will kind of talk about some players that they caught their eye, and then I will release the Player of the Week for Week 6. Let's roll through the list here. Patrick Henry, running back Houston Miranda. Eden, quarterback Kyler Sapp. Eden, wide receiver Max Radaball. Napoleon's Trey Rubenstein. Hilltop, running back Wade Wagner. Paulding, running back Kobe Four. Paulding, linebacker Jack Woods. Ayersville, running back linebacker Taryn Knieven. Columbus Grove, running back Trenton Barraza. Archbold, quarterback Cade Brenner. Liberty Center, running back Colton Cruz. Antwerp, quarterback Carson Altimus. Antwerp, running back linebacker Reed Leachty. Striker, quarterback Jacob Caldwell. And Holgate, quarterback Xavier McCord. Guys, who wants to start off with someone who, really thought that they could be possibly Player of the Week?
Yeah, there's a lot of good names on here. You look at Holgate, Xavier McCord, you look up the list, and I'm talking about my good buddy from Patrick Henry, Houston Miranda. 29 carries, 132 yards. He just comes, like I said, to play every Friday night. And kudos to the Patrick Henry offensive line. And last year I was on the Nash Meyer train. This year on the Houston Miranda train. But yeah, he just seems to be just showing up every week and
a good performance against a quality Wauseon team too.
Yep, carrying the rock.
AJ?
Yeah, I liked Kyler Sapp's performance over there with Eden, playing Montpelier. 26 completions for 418 yards. That's a pretty good stat in itself, but the fact that he played clean, no interceptions, pretty decent completion percentage, 4 passing touchdowns. Not to mention he ran the ball for 68 yards for 5 total touchdowns. Fantastic game from Kyler Sapp over there at Eden.
Tony?
Well, for me, Keith brought up Houston Miranda, and he ran the ball 29 times. I looked down at Kobe Four from Paulding, ran the ball 29 times. But you know what? Trenton Barraza says, fellas, hang on a second. I got you. Ran the ball 32 times for 258 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just a workhorse for Columbus Grove.
All right. After all these great performances, we picked, and I kind of, predetermined this too. I said to the guy that was texting me, I said, man, this guy's going to be Player of the Week, no doubt in my mind. And that kid is Trey Rubenstein from Napoleon. 4 interceptions the first half, one of those being a pick 6. On offense, he had 2 receptions for 50 yards and 1 receiving touchdown. That is quite the performance. Like I said, I don't know that I've actually seen a defensive performance that good in quite some time. So probably, honestly, the best defensive performance this year. To this point for sure, and possibly, the entire year. But man, this kid is a true athlete, and I'm excited to see what he does and how he continues to grow in his career. So the NWO Sports Player of the Week for Week 6 is Napoleon's Trey Rubenstein. So congratulations to him. Our Player of the Week will receive an NWO Sports Gear t-shirt, courtesy of BSN Sports. And I just want to give an additional shout out to BSN Sports too. Very great company that loves to give back to the community. Yep. Very supportive of us in this podcast, and just can't thank them enough for what they do for all the local high schools, athletics programs, businesses. They do a very good job. And Jim Garris and all those guys there, excellent job. I just can't say enough and give them enough kudos. So very appreciative of what BSN Sports does in this area.
Yeah, I've known Jim forever. Like, I graduated with Jim. I've known him all through my life. Fantastic guy. So nothing but the best from Jim and BSN Sports. And he actually supplied Coach Fairchild over here with the best looking uniforms, at least a personal opinion, in the area for his softball team.
Yeah, he did a nice job of those jerseys, and looking forward to doing more work with them.
Yeah, and a special thanks to Rob Held as well. He's been a big contributor, and he's very supportive of things as well too. So just can't thank those guys at BSN Sports enough. Yep. Let's move on to the next segment. We're looking at power rankings for Week 7, and there's been a little bit of changes in the top 10. So we're going to kind of go through, and I will release each group of teams, and then these guys will kind of comment of what their thoughts are. So coming in at number 25 on the list is Swanton, 24 Hilltop, 23 Hicksville, 22 Fairview, 21 Edgerton, 20 Ottawa-Glandorf. Thoughts here?
Fairview has a chance to move up here in the next couple of weeks. And actually, they play Edgerton this week, I believe, at Edgerton. So,
yeah, I think a lot of those teams, and even though you look OttawaGranger 0-6, they've been right there, and they play one of the tougher schedules.
Yep.
You look, they're in the WBL, so tough conference slate, a couple tough non-conference games as well. Don't let the 0-6 record fool you. And the thing with these rankings is I always kind of look, if OttawaGranger and Edgerton were to go out there and match up, who would win that matchup? So that's I kind of look at that as well. You look at strength of schedule, players, athletes. There's all kinds of things that get taken into it. So let's go into the next section. 19 Evergreen, 18 Delta, 17 Montpelier, 16 North Central, 15 Paulding. Thoughts here?
I know that North Central Montpelier lineup there is causing some stirs up in the north. It sounds like some comments on Facebook posts, things like that. So, other than that, I think that's a pretty accurate standing.
And it goes back to strength of schedule, too. And Montpelier, they jump up a little bit because Eden's a quality team, and they hung right with there, and they had a chance to win. Same with North Central. North Central's got some tougher. Obviously, they're an independent, so they've got some other tough schools coming up with some winning records. So we'll see what they can do, and if they can win those big games against teams that have winning records, I think they rightfully so, they move up the list.
Oh, yeah.
I got to crack you on one, Logan. This is the thing that I have a problem with, like the Buckeyes and all that kind of stuff. When you win ball games and you drop, Paulding won a game last week and won it handedly, and you dropped them a spot. So I'm going to get on the Paulding train here for a minute and say, I don't know about that one, Logan.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a valid point. So
you just have a tough time when somebody wins, you drop them in the rankings.
Especially when Logan is a conductor of the Paulding train anyway. So.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, Logan.
I know. I try to be non-biased as possible, but Paulding beat Edgerton, and Edgerton's ranked at number 21.
Right.
So if Paulding were to go out and they beat Wayne Trace or Sonora or one of those other GMC schools, and they rightfully move up. So that's kind of where I look at things.
I just look at, if they beat them in a close game, then I say okay. But when they beat them handedly, then in my opinion, they shouldn't fall. But it is what it is.
Sure. Let's move on here. Looking at 14 Wayne Trace, 13 Sonora, 12 Napoleon, 11 Eden. We'll save the top 10 next.
Pretty accurate. Rams have a chance to move up big here if they can pull out a W Friday night.
Yeah, I think you look at this list. Wayne Trace could certainly move up too. I believe they play Antwerp this week.
Yeah.
So big matchup. And Wayne Trace has a lot of talent too. So I'm excited to see where they go with things. Napoleon sitting at 12. Don't let that 2-4 record fool you, because you look at the non-conference. They played Defiance, they played Liberty Center, and they played Anthony Wayne, a couple big schools. Now they're getting into the rhythm of that Cardinal division of the NLL. Some games that they can definitely win. So don't be surprised if Napoleon comes out of here and they go 6-4, 5-5 for the year, and playing against some tough, bigger schools too. Looking at the top 10 here, number 10, Bryan, number 9, Ayersville, number 8, Columbus Grove, number 7, Wauseon, number 6, Van Wert.
I tell you what, Ayersville sitting at 5-1 is one that kind of surprises me a little bit, just because they're at 5-1, but then I go back and look at their schedule. Really haven't been tested yet, other than to Bluffton. So, I mean, Paulding depending on how you look at that, could have won that game, but. And Sonora being at 13, I know I'm going to backtrack here a little bit, could easily be 5-1. I mean, but you look at two of their losses, Archbold and Liberty Center. Yep. So, right. I mean, so they're sitting at 3-3, but two of their losses were two of the best teams in the area right now. So,
right.
But Ayersville's kind of surprised me. They're at 5-1. We'll see what they can do this week.
Looking at the top 5 Antwerp, 4 Archbold, 3 Patrick Henry, 2 Defiance, and number 1 Liberty Center. Thoughts on the top 5?
I think Defiance could easily stay right where they're at, depending on what happens with the Liberty Center Patrick Henry game. I think either it's going to solidify the location of Liberty Center, or I think Patrick Henry might flip up into the number 1 spot. It's hard to say whether they're better than Defiance or not, but if Patrick Henry comes out and beats Liberty Center somehow, I think maybe they could leapfrog into 1.
Boy, it's man, that's tough, dude. Does Patrick Henry leapfrog Defiance? I mean, Antwerp, does they stay at 5? It's one of those things where would Antwerp rank? If you took those 5 teams, who do you think is going to go the furthest? I mean,
and you look at those 5 teams. We've watched Antwerp play, we've watched Archbold play, we've watched Defiance play, and we've watched Liberty Center play. The only team we haven't watched is Patrick Henry.
Yeah.
And I can tell you those 4 teams that we've watched, are pretty darn good football
all legit.
teams.
All legit.
I feel like it's hard to say, but even
especially those top four. I mean, Antwerp, take Antwerp out of it because people say, oh, they're, but let's take Antwerp, the top four. If you had a playoff and you took those four teams, I'm not sure Liberty Center right now is just playing lights out, but if you would take those four teams and put them in a playoff,
who would be that second team there?
College football playoff, right? You got four teams.
Right,
you take those four teams and you put them in a playoff.
Yep.
I honest to God, right at this point in time, I don't know who walks out of there. I mean, Liberty Center right now is obviously the hands-on favorite. They're kicking everybody's tail, and they're taking care of business handedly.
They're the traditional Alabama team in college.
So when you look at Defiance, going back a couple weeks to the hot takes, the WBL, nobody could compete with the WBL.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a good test. 3 WBL teams and a Defiance team, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It'd be an interesting matchup.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that concludes our power rankings for Week 7. We're going to take a break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with a couple great segments.
Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty is a top real estate agent in Northwest Ohio. Crystal's compassion and enthusiasm allow her to find that special property or house just for you. Located in Bryan, Ohio, give her a call today at 419-799-1243. Jimenez Basketball Academy strives to create an atmosphere to cultivate basketball fundamentals in Northwest Ohio youth athletes, offering one-on-one sessions, group sessions, speed and agility training, and much more. Located in Pettisville, Ohio, call Coach Jesse today at 419-551-8105. The Drop Zone Pizzeria is the #1 voted pizza restaurant in the region. Check them out for pizza, wings, subs, and more. Located in Ayersville and Stryker, or ask them about their traveling food trailer. Optimal Performance Fitness is your go-to gym in Northwest Ohio, providing group fitness classes, personal training, and sports performance sessions for area athletes. Located in Napoleon, Ohio, give them a call today at 419-438-7265.
We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast, and we are on to our favorite section, the Hot Takes, presented by BSN Sports. And we got another good batch of hot takes from a bunch of fans that submitted to us. So again, each week we have fans that submit them to us and continue to do so. We love talking about these. So let's go ahead. Let's get into the first hot take. And the first hot take is, as a Wauseon fan, Liberty Center takes Patrick Henry out behind the woodshed and gives them the business. So someone's not taking that lightly. And one of you guys want to start it off?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, the way Liberty Center is playing, that actually might happen. But, man, oh, man, just giving them the business.
I mean, we thought Archbold would put up a fight against Liberty Center, and we see how that went. So do you really want to underestimate Liberty Center's ability to give them the business again? Because it could end up being the same outcome here. Liberty Center taking the win over Patrick Henry big.
Yeah, just seeing what Liberty Center's done to every opponent, they're just blowing their doors off. And Patrick Henry, I think, is #2 team in Division 7 this week, and Liberty Center, I think, is #3 in Division 5. So I mean, it's a great matchup. When you look at that, it's just when you see what Liberty Center did to Bryan, who was putting up just numbers, passing, running, averaging 40 points a game, and they completely shut them down.
Yeah, I think it's
so. I just don't. The best offense is let me reverse that. The best defense is an offense. So if you're Coach I, you want to keep the ball away from Liberty Center. This could be a quick game if both teams decide to run it, but
I just don't see Patrick Henry being able to do that.
I don't.
I mean, I know you got Miranda, but geez, they shut down Sam Harold.
We talk about it too. Patrick Henry is a good ball club. Don't get me wrong, but you look at numbers too. I believe I've heard they've got like 30 guys on their roster. They're really low on numbers. And you get into deep games like this, kids are going to get hurt. Kids are going to get banged up. You're going to need substitution. So that's where depth comes into play. Liberty Center has 8+ guys on their roster. 68. It's unbelievable. They walk out and it's an army of guys from Liberty Center coming at you. Yeah. And I just don't know. Patrick Henry is going to need to play a flawless game. No mistakes at all. You cannot give Liberty Center any leeway, but I think Liberty Center is going to take care of business. We saw what they've done to Archbold. We've saw what they've done to Bryan. Like you said, Keith, Bryan has been one of the top offenses in the year, and they could only score 7 points, and that was late in the game too. So I think Patrick Henry's going to have a tough time, and it's all going to come down to, I think, Patrick Henry's defense really needs to step up. Obviously, we know the offense is there, but the defense is really going to have to step up because Patrick Henry's gave up a fair amount of points through the season. You look at first game of the season, they give up 0 points to Hicksville. They give up 12 to Wayne Trace, 28 to Columbus Grove, which Columbus Grove is a good team, 0 to Evergreen. They give up 42 to Bryan, which they have a really good offense. They give up 24 to Wauseon. You give that to Liberty Center, they're gonna take it and they're gonna run miles and miles and miles with that, and they're gonna run the ball, then they're gonna run the ball some more.
Right.
So I think I unfortunately I think I have to agree with this one. So well, I mean I could be wrong, but I think Liberty Center is just too much, and I don't see any stopping the Tigers.
The only thing I just hope that it stays injury free and everybody comes out of this thing, because Patrick Henry, low in numbers, you don't want to come away with their
right.
an injury, and keep everything clean and don't get anybody hurt.
Yep, another great atmosphere game. I mean,
definitely.
over at Liberty Center, that's going to be jammed.
That stadium's going to be packed. Yeah, unreal. It'll probably be probably the biggest game.
Yeah.
Like we said at Archbold a couple of weeks ago, the games just keep getting bigger and bigger.
Every week.
And this is the biggest one for both teams at this point because it's the next team in front of them, and both teams are undefeated in the league. So it's going to be a great atmosphere. Definitely get out there. And hopefully it stays close. But I think Liberty Center, I do think that they come away with this one big. Let's move on to the next hot take here. As someone who's played both Wayne Trace and Antwerp, Wayne Trace beats Antwerp by 3 scores. I'll start this one. So obviously we kind of can, if you can figure out who this probably came from because there's a select teams that have played both to this point. But we've seen both teams play. We know Antwerp does have some weaknesses, obviously following Sonora and things like that. I think Wayne Trace has a shot. They have a shot if they can't turn the ball over. Their defense is fairly stout. They've controlled the second half. If they would have played the second half of the Sonora game and they play that for both halves in this Antwerp game, I think they have a legitimate shot. But at the end of the day, I think Antwerp prevails because they have so many good athletes.
I'm with you there, Logan. They've got a shot. If they play some very clean, very efficient football, they've got a shot at knocking Antwerp off, which could just destroy the GMC as far as who's placed where and what's going on. But they've got a shot. I think Antwerp still comes out, and we'll get into that with game predictions. But by 3 scores, definitely not. There's no way that's going to happen. I could see it being, a 1 touchdown or even a 3-point game, maybe.
Much more realistic, yeah.
Yeah, not a 3-score game.
No, there's no way that they're going to beat them by 3 touchdowns. I'm sorry. That's
why it's a hot. That's why it's a hot take.
Absolutely.
I don't know. It's Wayne Trace is definitely a tough team that they definitely proved to me that they can play. I think Antwerp matches up with them a little bit different. But I don't know. Not 3 scores. Not 3 scores. I think Wayne Trace can squeak out of this with a win, but I don't think it's going to be by 3 scores.
Yeah, and if Wayne Trace wants to squeak out of this with a win, they got to put pressure on Ultimus. We've seen that in the past. Ultimus is a quality quarterback, and they got to try to put him under stress in order to have a chance. But we know at the end of the day, like when we watch the Sonora game, Ultimus is going to get his yards and is going to get his scores. We know Landon Brewer is going to get his too.
Yep.
You can only slow those guys down because you got guys like Cam Fuller and Caden Winslow. Those guys step up at wide receiver. So it's like you take away this guy, these other 2 compensate, and it's like, where do you go from there? So, but we did see again the Sonora game. If you can run the ball, you can have some success against Antwerp. So overall, this is another game that's going to have a great atmosphere. So a lot of people are going to be here, but like you guys said, 3 scores, that's just a little too much. It's going to be, if I had to put a spread on this game, I'd probably, give Antwerp 7 to 14 points. So, All right, let's move on to the next hot take. The NWOAL, and we kind of discussed this a few weeks ago, should be Liberty Center, Archbold, Bryan, Wauseon, Defiance, Ottawa-Glandorf, Napoleon, and Bowling Green. Thoughts here?
Well, I don't know about that one. I mean, they just think that's the team that need to be in it.
Boy, I don't know.
Ottawa-Glandorf would be the far reach for the team, but I mean, still shorter than Defiance driving all the way to Kenton or Wapakoneta. But I mean, Napoleon and Defiance can play in the NWOAL.
I think logistically that makes more sense. I mean, those teams are a lot closer. Like you said, Defiance going all the way to Kenton.
Yep.
that's not
Same areas.
logistical for Defiance. Obviously Defiance is competing in the WBL, and they could probably compete in the NWAL as well. But yeah, I think some restructuring of some of the conferences, especially in like Defiance's case, could be beneficial to them, just so that way they're not hauling 2.5 hours on a Friday night.
There's a lot of talk right now about conference realignment.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, within the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a lot of realignment in high school. Look at what's going on with the NLL. I know there's a lot of word about Napoleon trying to find a new conference or a new fit too. And obviously with the NWL, there's been talk for the last 5 years about, teams coming and teams joining and things like that. But I really do think, there's a lot more serious talk and things start to happen within the next 5 to 10 years.
I think one of the downfalls, unfortunately, is like when you look at Defiance and Napoleon, they have so many more sports, soccer, tennis.
Right. That's what I was going to say, the same thing.
That's the issue, I think, when you're looking to go to a different conference. Like, I don't think any of these other teams offer soccer or swimming or swimming.
Yeah. I think some of them do, but they may offer swimming, but they don't have tennis.
Right,
they may have this,
yeah,
they might have that, they don't have that. So I think that's a very valid point too. But like AJ said, logistically,
it makes a heck of a lot more sense.
That's pretty reasonable. You throw Ottawa-Glandorf's the furthest south, and that would be a stretch if you drove from Bryan to Ottawa-Glandorf. That would probably be an hour and a half haul almost.
Probably, but as soon as you guys say logistically, then I'm watching the college football, and I know it's totally different.
Oh, good Lord.
But now you've got USC, UCLA, all those teams from out west joining the Big Ten, and it makes absolutely zero logistical sense to play those teams, especially when they got to play Rutgers.
Yeah,
it's literally flying from coast to coast.
East to west coast.
So.
But look at the Northern Lakes League. You have Finley in there playing a bunch of Toledo teams. So anymore, I feel like it's just whatever's most competitive and what conference is going to put those teams in the position to succeed in both A, the conference, and B, in the playoffs too. So,
well, and I think Keith's point was probably the most valid point when you talk about realigning those teams that when Defiance and Napoleon are the bigger schools, they have the tennis, they have the swimming, they have those other there's soccer and all that stuff. They got to make sure they're in a conference where they're going to be able to play people in that conference.
Right.
You can't put yourself in the NWAL and then travel to Kenton anyways because you got to go play tennis.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. My only thing is,
it'd be neat to see that kind of conference, but
if something would happen like this with those teams, I think some of those schools would probably drop those sports.
Right.
That would only boost the numbers most likely for your other sports too. So I don't know. I think this is going to be a continuing conversation to be had for years to come. And it keeps coming up each week on the hot take. So, people are thinking about this. This is getting a lot of conversation in Northwest Ohio too. But I think some teams, they it's been all hearsay lately, but I think I really do within the next 5 to 10 years, I think you're going to see a lot of conference realignment in the area.
Yep. So one last little point on this. So everybody looks at this as football, but where would Liberty Center? Archbold's got a quality basketball team. I don't know about Brian Wauseon. OG has a quality basketball. So where do they match up in the other sports?
Sure.
Right? Football could play with Defiance, but what about basketball? What about baseball? What about?
You look at the other sports like Napoleon. They've always got a quality, baseball, basketball program. When I think of Napoleon, I honestly think basketball to me.
Yep.
Ottawa-Glandorf, obviously basketball. They're fairly decent at baseball. Like if we're just looking at the most popular guys' sports, baseball, basketball, football. Liberty Center, they're usually quality in basketball. Baseball, kind of here in the middle. Archbold is always quality in everything: baseball, basketball, football. Bryan, pretty good baseball. Basketball can be iffy. Wauseon is usually pretty quality in all of them. So I think they match up competitively if you look at the men's sports side of things.
Right. I think for the most part, Logan and Tony and AJ, most of these teams play each other outside of football anyways.
Oh, they do.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
football is probably the outlier of the conference realignment talk in this segment right here. But outside of that, most of these teams do play each other in girls basketball, boys basketball, baseball, softball,
Wrestling.
Right.
So.
Yeah. No, the only one I'm not sure of is Bowling Green, obviously, because they're a little more east, and I feel like we don't obviously we don't talk about them as much, so I don't really know how they are in, you know, basketball or baseball or softball or things like
Just
that.
funny you said that, Keith. I was just looking at it. You mentioned that playing each other. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's my softball team. We play Liberty Center, Archbold, Bryan, Wauseon, Defiance. Well, we don't play Napoleon, but we play Bowling Green. So we don't play OG and Napoleon out of that group.
So you play almost all of them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a good talk, and like I said, that's going to keep coming up for quite a while. So it'll be interesting to hear maybe some other conferences, you know, Green Meadows Conference, see what some people think about what the Green Meadows Conference could look like in the next 5 to 10 years too.
Like we talked to Coach Robinson, like that's one of those teams where if they would to sneak into the GMC, you know, that's a perfect match, really.
Who's that?
Montpelier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I could see them sliding into the GMC.
They're kind of a team without a conference. I mean, not in football. So.
Yeah, I don't know, but there's a lot of things that can happen. So let's move on to the next one. We had a request, and I know obviously we didn't have everyone send in uniforms, but people wanted us to kind of talk about the area football uniforms. So we were looking over some, and I have to say probably my most favorite, or one of the coolest ones, and I'll attach pictures to these. I really like the Van Wert Cougars all reds. The red helmet, I'm looking at it now, the red pants. It's just very sharp, very clean. That's probably got to be my favorite from everyone that kind of submitted them. So I don't know, guys, what are your thoughts on who did you kind of like?
I liked, there's a photo sent in from Napoleon. A couple things, really. Number one, there was a photo sent in with them wearing red helmets, and I didn't know that was Napoleon. But there was another photo sent in with them wearing like an American flag jersey. Man, those things are sharp. Those are top notch, man. They're like camouflage
They're
on
really
the middle,
cool.
and there's stars on one shoulder, stripes on the other. To me, those are the bomb.
That's what we said too. The National Guard, I believe, has jerseys that go around and they share them with teams. But these are actually Napoleon's jerseys, from my understanding. They raised money, so they get to wear them for special, you know, veterans or military appreciation games, and you know those are really cool though. So
hey, Jim Garris, we're gonna have a chat, buddy. We might do that. We might do something like that.
Jim Garris of BSN Sports.
Yeah.
And just kind of quick point too, we discussed with the red helmets, that's something new for Napoleon. And the last time Napoleon had red helmets was 1994. Coach Snowd took over for the program, and then Coach Strott took over after that. Coach Snowd, I believe, from my understanding, is that he went back to the blue helmets. But they had red helmets back in the past, which I never knew that. So that's kind of interesting.
Didn't know red was a Napoleon color.
We talked about with some of these teams bringing back that third option of color with Sonora. Sonora used to be green, white, and they had the gold. And now the boys basketball team, they have that gold outline around their jerseys, bringing back the short shorts and things like that. So a lot of throwbacks coming back for teams. Keith, AJ, who are some jerseys that you thought were pretty interesting?
I'm a big fan of blackout jerseys across the board. We haven't seen Sonora's yet. I'm guessing they're probably going to be out for homecoming, if I had a bet.
Maybe actually Friday night.
I say that.
I
think it's got to be a home game.
Okay.
So,
that's right.
Yep.
probably next week against, I think it's Paulding, they play at home. But I love blackout jerseys. Ohio State's got some really nice looking ones. And then looking through the pictures we had for, you know, the high school teams here, Antwerp's blackout jerseys were pretty cool. The black with the blue lettering might sometimes make it a little hard for us as announcers to see the numbers, but they do look very sharp. And I'm looking forward to seeing Sonora's blackout jerseys as well.
Keith?
I'm an old school traditionalist. I'm not a solid color guy, but those uniforms for Van Wert do look pretty sweet. I'm more of a traditionalist. Just give me a colored pants, white jerseys. Antwerp honestly has some of the better looking jerseys. Like AJ said, from a broadcaster standpoint, their black jerseys with the blue numbers look great. We just can't see. We just can't see them. But Antwerp has just got some of the nicest clean cut jerseys, pant combination there is. A couple other ones. Archbold's old school. I don't think they've changed their colors in forever.
You're talking about,
as far as same look, same jersey style, same helmet, same pants. Those look pretty sharp. Honestly, to me, Fairview, when they wear their white jerseys with the black pants, I love that look. Something about that look it is pretty A+. And Brian kind of has like the LSU vibe going on when they put the right combo together. But to me, Antwerp and Fairview And then Napoleon incorporating the red the last couple of years too is starting to come back from the 80s and whatnot in the early 90s. But if I had to choose an all-time favorite uniform, which I could talk about this stuff all day long. I mean, I'm a uniform junkie. I love it. Probably Antwerp. Not really any sort of combo, but like AJ said, the black on black with the blue, can't see the numbers. It looks nice. And Fairview with the white top and the black pants is just A+.
I think you made a fair point too. Some of those traditional uniforms, I'm looking at like Archbold,
that's
Wauseon.
great. That's a great look at Wauseon.
It's just such a classic uniform, and sometimes there's no reason to spoil those combos because it's so traditional. It just looks sharp. It looks clean. It meshes well together. But looking at a couple other uniforms that kids sent in, Delta's green jerseys, I like those a lot. They kind of look like the Nike Color Rush. You get kind of that, I don't know, Delta green in there. And
Eden's is sharp.
Eden's
all
blue. Those are really sharp.
They got the gray lettering on it, so it might be a little easier to read.
Right. Very true. But another one, I actually like Fairview's yellow jerseys. Those are pretty neat too. Those alternate jerseys.
With the black pants.
Yeah, the black pants, the black lettering. Those look really cool. I kind of like those. I didn't even know they had the yellow jerseys like that. So that's another good quality jersey. North Central, they've got some cool uniforms too. They go all black. They got the white combos. Again, a very traditional look. So a lot of cool unis in the area. So maybe eventually we'll come up with a top, 15 or top 10 uniforms. But
I like it.
We could talk about this for all day long.
Absolutely. I like the off topic things like this that we can throw in.
Oh yeah, it makes things
last week we had
fun.
The concession stand and uniform. So yeah, keep coming in with some little oddball stuff.
All right,
Michael Hearn.
Yeah, right.
Hey, speaking of the concession stand, what's Ayersville have? Do they have anything over there?
I don't know.
Their popcorn melts in your mouth. That I do know. They've had the best popcorn forever.
Yeah, I don't know. If you're an Ayersville fan, you'll have to send us what is Ayersville's go-to item.
Drop Zone Pizzeria will have Harold will have the trailer at the game Friday night, so you can get that before the game, during the game, and
I'm gonna have to get there early.
Right? Yeah.
So we'll
that way, while we're sitting there listening to all those pizza ads, I'll be eating a pizza.
There you go.
Well, we'll be sitting outside probably, so
we will. Unfortunately,
hopefully have nice weather.
Yes.
And then we have one last point here, and Tony, why don't you take this one away?
Hey, I was Saturday. I my wife ran in the One Step at a Time 5K fundraiser. Supporting suicide awareness and all that kind of stuff. And she wanted to run on that. And it was at the Boy Scout camp, and which is right, just down the road from Defiance High School. And I got there and, kind of standing there talking to some people that I knew. And I look over and guess who I see? I see Coach Cooper and a bunch of Defiance Bulldog boys there. They came over there to support, the program, the benefit. And, I got the chance to walk over and talk to Coach Cooper, and I told him, I said, class act, man. I'm just very proud of those boys for, taking time out of their day to come over there. And Coach said, well, we were going to run or lift anyway, so so they come over. They got to run a mile, I think, of it, and But I tell you what, we talked for probably 20 minutes, I bet, and talked a little bit about the game and just talking about, how those boys support the programs and the different things they do, setting up for Rib Fest and stuff like that. And just, to me, that's what the sport's all about. That's building good people is the number one thing you're supposed to do in sports. And I tell you what, he's doing a heck of a job there.
I think that's one of the questions that we asked him during the coaches show, and he lit up on that one, and he talked for 4 or 5 minutes and just elaborated about, like you said, Tony, all the things in the community that they do that really nobody knows about. So, and one of the things is, which I talked to Sean tonight, Sean Mack, and he says, Coach Cooper's going to have the kids there for setup for the Rib Fest on the Saturday morning, right away. So, yep.
That's a nice thing about living in a smaller community is, things like that, they're you can't put a price on it.
Right.
That goes so far for so many people, and to go out and lend a helping hand, that just means a lot. And it's good to see that these kids are doing good things in the community and really helping out to make this world a better place.
Yeah.
Lord only knows that all the crazy stuff that goes on.
Absolutely.
But to see almost a light for these kids to go out and to help, and these coaches to give these kids good examples of what it is to be a good man, what it is to be a good person, what it is to to do these things, and it becomes habit, and it breeds good people in this world. So
yeah. He definitely challenged me as a coach. I just immediately thought to myself as a coach, I got to do more with that. I got to get the kids involved in some more stuff. And I immediately started thinking in my head, okay, what can we do as a team, for softball? And the girls will be in for it. I know they will be, because they're great. I got a bunch of great girls for me too. But it just challenged me as a coach to kind of like, hey, you need to step up a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
very good point there, Tony. So, let's go ahead. Let's move on to Matthew's breakout players for Week 7. Matthew's Offensive Player of the Week is Brian running back Sam Harold. Reasoning is Evergreen has given up a combined 106 points in their first 3 conference games and has really struggled on defense, so I expect a big game out of Sam. My Defensive Player of the Week is safety Garrett Rodenberger from Defiance. Reasoning is Elida struggled on offense and aren't putting up a lot of points, even in their win, so I expect a big week from Garrett. Like I say every single week, Matthew's over there. I don't know what he's doing, but
hey, Matthew, you missed one this past week, buddy. Rubenstein was a
hey, but he picked Bockelman for defense. And Bockelman had a couple sacks, a couple tackles for loss, and he was a menace on the defensive line. But I don't know. We'll see. Matthew is like Nostradamus over in Bryan. Absolutely. So thanks again for Matthew and all his help. He does an excellent job, and he's very helpful in NWO Sports. So let's go ahead. We're going to take a break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back with Week 7 game predictions and closing thoughts.
Northwest Ohio Basketball hosts premier basketball tournaments for boys in grades 3 to 8 in the area. Upcoming tournaments are right around the corner. Give them a call today at 419-283-5296 or check out their website at nwoball.com. The Thunderdome is your local indoor softball and baseball facility offering private lessons, turf infield, batting cages, and pitching machine rentals, even offering a golf simulator. Located in Archbold, Ohio. Give them a call today at 419-906-3643. Nicely Rentals and Storage is your go-to venue for graduation parties, birthdays, weddings, and more. Also offering vehicle storage, table and chair rentals, and U-Haul equipment. Located in Ayersville, Ohio. Give them a call today at 419-439-6177.
Truland Equipment and Salesman Lauren Brown are your go-to for John Deere equipment in Archbold, Ohio. Mowers, compact tractors, skid loaders, and more. Your sales expert on commercial turf and CCE sales. Give Lauren a call today at 419-445-1565.
Back on the NWO Sports Podcast, and we're into the Week 7 game predictions. So we're going to go ahead and roll right through the predictions, and we'll let you guys know what we're thinking. Let's look at the first game here on the slate. Swanton 0-6 at Archbold 5-1. Again, we've watched Archbold in person. Other than the Liberty Center game, they pretty much dominated everyone outside their schedule. We know Swanton's struggling with the program right now, coming off a tough loss last week. And I think the Blue Streaks take care of business, Coach Dominic, and I think they win big. I think this game is over at halftime.
Streaks.
Blue Streaks.
Archbold.
Bryce and Matthew both had Archbold as well, so everyone going with Archbold. Next game, Evergreen 2-4 at Bryan 3-3. Evergreen's shown some glimpses throughout the year that they can go out and compete. I don't know that they get it done. Bryan's coming off a tough loss, a really tough loss to Liberty Center, but we know what Bryan's offense is capable of. The big factor here is going to be if Bryan's defense can step up, because Evergreen's got some different threats on the offensive side of the ball. If Bryan's offense comes out and does what they normally do and their defense steps up, I think they handle this one. So I'm going the Golden Bears.
Golden Bears.
Bryan
for me.
And Bryce and Matthew all had Bryan, so Bryan from everyone. Next game, Wauseon 4-2 at Delta 3-3. Delta showed some improvement here as the season's gone on. They're coming off a big 42-0 win against Swanton. Tough loss to Archbold 0-41. They went out and competed against Bryan 28-49. That game was close. So I think Delta is improved, but I think Wauseon bounces back. They hung in there with Patrick Henry last week. I'm taking the Wauseon Indians.
Yeah, Wauseon actually needs this win bad because they have a rough 3 stretch games afterwards. But for me, this is... I thought about it for a while. I took Wauseon, took the Indians.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Indians.
Man, I was always on the Delta train last year, and I'll tell you, this game is very intriguing to go. at Delta way. Delta's playing at home.
Run that wing tee.
I'll stay with my original pick and go with Wauseon.
Oh, you always go against the grain.
I know. And I didn't really go against the grain on any game.
Come on,
this
Tony.
week.
Let's go Delta. Let's see if we can ag Tony on.
All right, I'll go Delta. I'm not afraid. Come on, Delta.
That's
Go
right.
Panthers.
Hey, the Delta people love Tony. So
Come on, Delta.
He's back on that bandwagon. Bryce went Wauseon and Matthew went Wauseon. So Tony going Delta.
I'll go Delta. What the heck?
All right, next game is the NWO Sports Game of the Week, and that's Patrick Henry 6-0 at Liberty Center 6-0, both undefeated in the NWAL. This is going to be a big one. A lot of people here. Similar to the Liberty Center Archbold game, we discussed this game in the hot takes. Patrick Henry is a good team. Don't get me wrong, but Liberty Center is on another level right now. And unless you can stop their run game or if you can match their physicality, I think this one, I think Liberty Center has their way. I think they're up big with a running clock at halftime, so I'm going the Tigers.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I just don't see how Patrick Henry can hang with Liberty Center. I'm taking the Tigers.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Tigers here. I agree with you, Logan. I don't know that anybody can match the physicality of Liberty Center at this point.
I'm going Liberty Center.
Bryce and Matthew both had Liberty Center as well. Next game, Wayne Trace 3-3 at Antwerp 6-0. Another intriguing game, similar to that Wauseon and Delta game. Wayne Trace is going to make this game close. I think that they're going to give Antwerp a run for their money. But at the end of the day, it's at Antwerp. Tough place to win at. Antwerp's got a lot of weapons, offensively, defensively. You got guys like, obviously, Carson Altimus, Reed Leachty, Cam Fuller, Landon Brewer. A lot of threats to try and stop. Wayne Trace really kind of held their own in the second half of Sonora. If Wayne Trace plays like that for an entire game, they don't turn the ball over, I think they have a chance. But I think I'm going the Archers. I think they come up big. They've been taking care of the GMC the last year and a half. I think they come up and Coach Hale gets a big win against Wayne Trace.
Hit all the bulletin points on the head there, Logan. I can't really say anything else. Taking the Archers.
I'm going to go with the Archers here, but yeah, they definitely got their hands full this week.
I had Wayne Trace in there, guys, and I think it's going to come down to turnovers. I think Wayne Trace is going to commit too many turnovers. Altimus does a very decent job taking care of the ball, so I think that's going to be the game changer.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Antwerp, so Antwerp across the board from all of us. Next game, Sonora 3-3 at Ayersville 5-1. Big rivalry game will be here. Okay.
I know what you're doing, Logan.
I know.
I know what you're doing. You go ahead and make your pick, and I'll tell you what you're doing. I know what you're doing.
I'm a Sonora guy, but I really like what Coach Mickey and the Pilots are doing over there right now. They've had some questionable games. They were down Paulding 17-0 at halftime. They're really running the rock well with Taryn Knieven. Their O-line and D-line, very good. One of the better ones in the GMC. I'm going Pilots. As much as it hates me, this is a big rivalry game. I try to be as non-objective and non-homer as possible. I think Sonora has to take care of the ball like they did against Wayne Trace, but we've seen Sonora times throughout the year that they struggle in big moments and big games, converting in the red zone, things like that. If Sonora can take care of those little things that add up and just shoot them in the foot, I think they win this game. I think they win it, and I think they win fairly handily if they can do all that. I don't know if they're consistent enough at this time to beat an Ayersville Pilot team. So I'm going Ayersville Pilots.
Consistency, Logan. That's exactly the key here. I don't honestly, even you probably asked Coach Becker here to tell you the same. They have not played a full game yet. Otsego, close. That's probably the closest 48 full minutes they've played this year.
They just haven't met their potential.
Absolutely right. And for 2 or 3 years, we kept hearing about the Sonora defense, the Sonora linebackers, these guys. They played good this year. I don't think that core linebacking crew for the Rams has played their best game yet. And if there's any game that's going to bring that out, it will be this game right here. It's got to be this game right here. So, like Logan, it bounces back and forth all week, plus, minus, strengths, weaknesses. Taking the Rams.
And I think, too, Keith, you make a valid point. I think potential, it goes not only to players, but coaches, too.
Yeah.
I think kids got to be put in situations to succeed. And I think if they can fire on all cylinders, I certainly think the Rams can win, but I just don't know if they can get it done. So that's why I was going the Pilots.
Yeah, I took Sonora.
Yep, I'm going to go with Sonora here, but it's going to be a tight game.
Again, this is going to be just like the Antwerp game. Like I mentioned, it's going to come down to turnovers. If we can take care of the rock, we'll be fine. But if we turn the ball over and we give Antwerp, give Ayersville some extra opportunities, it's not going to be good for us. And I'm a little concerned about that. Because I know Rams got some injuries up front, could play big into it as well. And you guys mentioned the linebackers not having their stellar games, great games, standout games, and I think it comes from the up front. I mean, last year, you think about who we had up front,
right,
Javen Gaines, and we had some big boys up front that can put some pressure on the quarterback, and that allows those linebackers just to fly around. But I'm taking Sonora, but I know what Logan's up to. Logan's last time he picked Sonora was if they won, he had to shave his face and his head and all that. So he's staying away from that. I'm going to pick the other team. That way I don't ever have to come.
Right, yeah.
I see your game, Logan.
I don't know. Hey, I get to save my beard and my hair for another day. So, but Bryce is going Sonora and Matthew's going Ayersville. So we're split on that game there. Next game, Fairview 0-6 at Edgerton 1-5. Another intriguing game. Both programs kind of struggled this year, but Fairview's improved. Edgerton's kind of on the other side. They've seen a lot of success over the last few years, but Edgerton, man, that's a tough place to play down in the valley. Yep. I like what Coach Rakes is doing over at Fairview. Again, another team similar to Sonora. I don't know that Fairview has fully played to their potential. We've seen their offense come out and they light up the scoreboard, but sometimes they come out and they're not always complete games. One week they may put up 500 yards of offense, the next week they may put up 150. Yep. If we see Fairview on all cylinders, I think they take care of business, and I'm going Fairview this game. But I could certainly see it the other way. So I'm going Fairview.
Taking the Apaches, I think they win this one going away.
Yep, Fairview for me.
God, as I sit here and look at this, I'm thinking, man, like you mentioned, playing at Edgerton, it's just one of those games that, man, oh man. Can you come back now? Yeah, I agree with you guys. If Fairview plays the way they have been, but I just kind of clicked back through their schedule, and they've had a couple of tough games here. They played Sonora, and then they played, or they played Sonora, then they played Paulding, then they played Antwerp, and didn't really throw up a lot of points in those games. And I'm kind of concerned because as I go back and I looked at Edgerton's lost, but they haven't thrown up a lot of points either. So I'll stay with Fairview.
Bryce had Edgerton and Matthew had Fairview. So that, like I said, that's a game I think could go either direction. Yeah. Next game, Hicksville 1-5 at Paulding 4-2. I like the way Paulding is playing. I'm back on that Paulding train. I'm fully committed. Fully committed until next week. So until this week. No, I'm just kidding. I like Paulding, and I think they are playing really well right now. 500 yards of offense last game. Jack Wood's the man on defense. They got Roanhouse. They got a couple other good guys really playing well for them. And as we always know, Paulding plays hard. And it's funny, I talked to a kid in junior high today at the clinic, and he even said, too, he plays for the GMC, he said Paulding hits hard. I said, man, that's something that they preach over there at Paulding, all the way from high school down to junior high, and I'm sure Little League, too. So I'm going Paulding, and I think they win this one big against Hicksville.
Taking the Panthers.
Paulding Panthers.
Yeah, Paulding, this is an easy pick.
Bryce had Paulding and Matthew had Paulding. So Paulding from all of us. Next game, Northwood 2-4 at Eden 4-2. Eden's going to do Eden things. They're going to go out and light up the scoreboard within a bobble and offense. I think they take this one. They go away winning big. Eden's a quality team, and I don't see this one being close. So I'm going the Bombers.
Bombers here.
Eden for me.
Bryce and Matthew both had Eden as well. Next game, Ottawa Hills 5-1 at Hilltop 1-5. I know Hilltop's coming off a big win, but man, they're going to hit a brick wall when they come to Ottawa Hills. Ottawa Hills is a quality team. They've made playoffs however many years in the last 10 years. They're always a playoff team anyways. They're always going out competing for conference championships. I think Ottawa Hills wins this one, and this game is over at halftime with a running clock, unfortunately for the Cadets. But nonetheless, Hilltop got their first win. Still go out there and compete.
Yep, good to see Hilltop get the W last week. Unfortunately, it's going to be a long Friday night. Taking the Green Bears.
Yeah, Ottawa Hills for me.
Ottawa Hills.
Ottawa Hills from Bryce and Matthew. Next game, Van Loo 1-4 at Montpelier 4-2. We got to hear a little bit of a preview of that from Coach Robinson earlier. I like Montpelier. I know Van Loo's kind of short on numbers. They have one win, but Coach Robinson, I cannot commend him enough for his efforts for Montpelier. I think they win this one going away.
Montpelier.
Locomotives.
Go Locos.
Bryce and Matthew both had Montpelier. Next game, North Central 5-1 versus Schroeder 1-5, and this is played at a neutral site at Versailles. So that's kind of nice. We talked about some of these games being long drives for them. At least they're playing at a neutral site that's splitting the difference. I'm not sure where Schroeder's even at.
Where's Schroeder? It's Versailles. That's still a haul for them.
Yeah, I'm going to guess Schroeder's somewhere down south, probably Cincinnati. I know they played a lot of Cincinnati teams, so at least that's nice. That cuts the travel down a little bit. But North Central's doing, they're playing very well right now, and we kind of talked about playing a weaker schedule, but nonetheless, 5-1's 5-1. Mm-hmm. Those are five hard fought wins that they earned, and you can't take those away. So I am going the Eagles and North Central.
Eagles.
North Central.
North Central for me.
And Bryce and Matthew both had North Central. A few other games here. Defiance 5-1 at Elida 4-2. Another interesting game. I like Defiance in this game because Elida's played kind of their schedule's backloaded. They play all these tough teams. Defiance, I believe they play like Van Wert, Wapakoneta, all these teams at the end of the season. Defiance has already been battle tested by all these, and they came out 5-1. I really like Defiance's chances, especially if Brogan has a chance of coming back this week. That's just another weapon. Abel Rubio's playing really well at running back. That's a 1-2 punch for your running back. And Brett Zipfel's taking care of the ball on offense. He's really taken that offense under his wing, and they are doing a nice job. I think the big thing is going forward is Defiance's defense. Can they step up? They've given up a few points here and there throughout the year. If that steps up, I think Defiance shuts out Elida, and they play lights out. So I'm going the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I think Coach Cooper's going to have the dogs ready to go. Taking the dogs.
Bulldogs.
Bryce and Matthew both had Defiance. Next game, Ottawa Glandorf 0-6 at Van Wert 3-3. I have to laugh looking at this because we have someone from Van Wert that watches the podcast and says, can you guys please, all of you, stop picking Van Wert because whatever we do, they seem to do terrible. I told them, I said, I'm just going to do what we normally do because that's what we do on the podcast. But I think this could get intriguing because Van Wert's on a skid right now. And like I said, they got to figure out some things. At the end of the day, I think they do figure things out. Coach Recker is a very good coach. Brylan Parker is a very good athlete. I think they take care of business. I think they get back on the right track this week, so I'm going the Cougars.
Van Wert for me, but if they lose this one, I'm never picking them again. So you got that going for you.
Right.
OG. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to go Van Wert. But I'll tell you right now, if we're never going to hear the end of if they lose this one.
Oh, I know it.
They lose to an 0-6 team. Yeah, you're going to get a call, Logan.
I'm going to get people outside my house with pitchforks and torches and everything else. So Bryce and Matthew had Van Wert. So we all had Van Wert. So we'll see what happens. So we'll see what happens there. Next game, Boucher 2-4 at Napoleon 2-4. I really like the way the Wildcats are playing right now. They're getting into the meat of their schedule. Boucher, I think what I was told is some of these Cardinal schools will play like an inner city Toledo school. But nonetheless, I think Napoleon hung with Anthony Wayne even through three quarters. I think Napoleon wins this game, and I think they have no problem with Boucher.
Cats.
Yeah, Napoleon.
Bryce and Matthew both had Napoleon. Last 11-man game here, and this is another good game, too, if you're in the area. Columbus Grove 4-2 at Lipsick 6-0. And I've thought about this game, too. And Columbus Grove is running the ball really well right now. And I don't know that Lipsick, they played some similar teams, too. And Lipsick came out on top against Pandora Gilboa. Pandora Gilboa beat Columbus Grove on a last-second touchdown. So there's some common denominators between the two. But I think Columbus Grove has gotten some of those mistakes corrected at the beginning of the season. And I think Coach Schaefer and the Bulldogs at Columbus Grove come out, and they're coming out with a win. So I'm going Columbus Grove.
Taking Lipsick Vikings.
I'm going with the Lipsick here.
Yeah, this is one of those that I kind of toiled over too. And it just, man, I don't know. Like you said, Columbus Grove's been doing really well, and I'm just going to stick with my pick. I'm going to go with Lipsick.
Bryce had Columbus Grove, and Matthew had Lipsick. So the Bailey boys are the only ones that went Columbus Grove.
And that game, going back to that game, I mean, just Columbus Grove's been throwing up some points. Like you said, they've kind of got some things figured out. And it just makes me, I really want to go in there and change that pick, but I'm just going to stick with it with the home team.
And last game here on the slate, looking at 8-man football, a big one. These two teams are rivals, and from what I've told, this rivalry is just as big as anything else in 11-man football. So you can throw all records out the door in this one, but it's Holgate 5-0 at Stryker 1-4. I think Holgate, like I said, they've been unstoppable this year. I think they go into Stryker, they take care of business, but don't count out Stryker. I think this game may be close.
Any rivalry game, you can 50-50 it, but it seems like Holgate's playing so well. Xavier McCord putting up numbers every single week, rushing, passing. Taking the Tigers.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Holgate.
Holgate for me.
And Bryce and Matthew all had Holgate, so Holgate from all of us. Well, guys, that concludes our Week 7 podcast. Closing thoughts.
I'm just excited to get out and watch. It's supposed to be another great night, Friday night. Thank goodness, because we're going to be outside broadcasting. We're going to be in the bleachers again.
We'll be in the bleachers.
We'll be in the bleachers, so it's going to be uncomfortable. And I have to be careful. People sitting around me. Can't get too worked up and yelling at people. And
have no place to throw the headsets this week.
Yeah, I know.
It's going to go down.
Just have to flip the mic up. No, I just get. I love football, guys, and I'm just excited to see another week. Another beautiful week to play.
Tony was famous this last week. If you guys didn't know, that clip of the Wayne Trace Sonora game, man, I had to laugh because at the clinic where I work, all you kept on hearing is people pull up that clip on their phones and hear Tony yelling, "That's a touchdown, guys!" So I had to laugh because you could easily recognize Tony's voice. So it's just awesome to see. Everyone's watching Sonora Rams live, NWO Sports. There's a lot of conversation about all of it through the clinic. I said, man, people have been talking to me about the podcast all the time as they come through. They really like it. So again, we appreciate all the support.
Absolutely. I think Tony Meyer said he listened to us on his way back. He had a long trip.
Oh, yeah.
And said it made his trip just went quick as heck. So thank you, Tony. For me, thanks to Coach Robinson for stopping out, making a long drive for him.
Yes, for sure.
After practice. Great guy. Hopefully we see the Montpelier community continue to grow and support his program, and he has success in the upcoming years. Same for Paulding and Coach Minzy.
Yes.
Get out and support your local high school football team. Just grab the kids, leave the cell phones at home, and just go enjoy a Friday night away from worries. You won't regret it. I say it all the time. I mean, this is why we do what we do, because we love it. You take the kids out, and you're going to fall in love with football, bands, cheerleaders, the whole experience.
I like what you said, too, about Coach Robinson. For him to take time, to drive 45 minutes
absolutely.
One way,
Yep.
40 minutes the other way after practice, day of work, that show he's really invested in that program. Yep. And I couldn't thank him enough for coming on the show. Yep. That says a lot about him. That says a lot about the Montpelier program. And he really wanted to promote the program, promote the kids, and get their names out there. So I can really appreciate that of a coach. AJ?
Kind of going to some worries. We have been seeing a ton of turnovers through several games. I mean, we're talking 5-6 turnovers in some of these games. Take care of the ball this week.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the biggest closing thoughts I've got is we got across the board, teams have got to get better at taking care of the football.
Be like that dude from the program that had to carry the football around.
Right, yeah.
Through class all day. You're never allowed to let it down.
We seriously, we talked when I played football at the University of Findlay, our coaches were so strict on ball control, ball security. Every practice, we'd start out with ball security drills. You'd run through, keep that ball tucked. I think our linebackers or running backs would actually seriously walk around with the ball in their arm, because controlling the rock is so critical. And we talk about the turnover margin, and there's statistics that show if you lose a turnover battle, you're most likely losing the game.
Right.
So it's just very important. And, that was always stressed to us when I was playing college ball too. So control the rock, you're going to win the game. End of story. So last closing thought, I got to throw in the stereotypical weather kind of talking point, but man, how nice has this weather been this year?
Gosh.
We have not had any precipitation. That's 2 years in a row.
2 straight years.
Last year until the playoffs, we had no really cold days, precipitation.
Nothing.
So
yeah, Matt. I said that, Logan. Now I gotta go look at next Friday.
Nice this weekend.
I gotta look at next Friday. What are you going to jinx us?
I don't know, but I'm very thankful for that.
It's supposed to be in the 80s next week.
Yeah, it's supposed to get warm again.
Unreal. So, other than that, I think that concludes the podcast. So we'd like to thank all of our sponsors again: 3-Chord, BSN Sports and Jim Garris, Bat Stevens Body Shop, Sonora Rams Live, Jimenez Basketball Academy, Fairchild Family Chiropractic, NWO Basketball, The Drop Zone Pizzeria, Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty, Optimal Performance Fitness, Nicely Storage and Rentals, the Thunderdome, and Trueland Equipment and Lauren Brown. We'd also like to give a special thanks to Jeff Batt for allowing us to use his amazing new facility at Bat Stevens Body Shop for today's podcast. Stay tuned for the next NWO Sports Podcast in the near future, and thanks for watching.